From 23 to 2022, teenagers spending time in face-to-face interaction has been reduced by 45%. Between 1999 and 2019, American suicide rates increased by 33%. And fact number 6, 54% of Americans reported that no one knows them well. You know, it's really hard to ignore these facts when we know that our most essential human need are the relationships that we have with other people. And I think you're here because you want to be part of this response, responding to the loneliness crisis. Maybe you're a faculty member and you want to learn how to create more meaningful connections with your students in and out of the classroom. Maybe you're a researcher who wants to dive into this topic and you want to have a deeper understanding of the issue. Or you're a practitioner who wants to make a real difference in people's lives through your coaching or your consulting. So I'm here to tell you this conference is for you. My name is Dr. Julien Mirivel. I'm a professor of applied communication at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock, and I'm really happy to be with you. I'm also the founder, along with my friends, who you're going to meet in a few moments here, of the Positive Communication Network. I want to share with you a little bit about our mission here and what we do. So here are my friends, as you can see. And everybody should see that, hopefully. No, let me try something else. Okay, everybody should see that. Is that correct, Maggie?
Let me share slides for you,
Oh,
Julien. I think if we're not seeing anything, I'll get you covered from the back end here.
Perfect. So you can see hopefully a picture of my friends here on the Positive Communication Network. I'm going to move on to the mission here, Maggie. In 2022, we came together to found the Positive Communication Network, and we had the mission of really trying to foster a community dedicated to creating better social worlds for all through positive communication research, education, and practice. You know, we already know from scholarship that's been done on this topic that what matters in countering loneliness, it's not just the quantity of our relationship, it's not how many friends we have, it's the quality of our connections. So what we've done for this conference is develop a program through which we propose that practicing positive communication can help all of us, me, you, develop more meaningful relationships with others. And we're about to explore how. So we've got a 5-part structure for this event. Maggie's going to show the next slide. We're going to start with a really great keynote by Dr. Kory Floyd, based upon his book, The Loneliness Cure. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. We'll be putting the link in the chat. We'll have a full section dedicated to research on the topic of loneliness and connection, led by Tom Socha. We're going to have a 3rd part focusing on positive communication pedagogy. That's going to be led by Maggie Pitts and a number of speakers. We're going to have a 4th part, which is really on practice, led by Amy Young, but we have 3 outstanding coaches and consultants who are going to be leading 3 macro trainings, each 10 minutes long, and then we're going to have group discussion. There's going to be a lot of interaction through this conference. So please also stay with us for the after-conference event. We developed a meet and greet and dream, and so during that part, after the conference, we invite you to join us and think about the future of positive communication and have a chance to network with people. So I'm going to welcome you to this party. Let's get it started with our first speaker, Dr. Kory Floyd. I'm going to introduce him, and then the floor is going to be his coming right up. Dr. Kory Floyd is a professor of communication and a professor of psychology at the University of Arizona. He's also a licensed mental health counselor. His research focuses on the communication of affection in close relationships and its effects on stress and physiological functioning. He's the author of 16 books in over 100 scientific papers and book chapters on the topics of affection, emotion, family communication, nonverbal behavior, and health. He's also the author of The Loneliness Cure, and we could not be happier to welcome Dr. Kory Floyd to the stage and share his work with the Positive Communication Network. Please join me in welcoming him warmly. Thank you so much for being with us, Kory.
Thank you so much for having me. This is quite an honor. I'm going to share my screen now, if that's okay, and get us ready to talk a little bit about loneliness. It's really an honor to be with you today. This is my first opportunity to be a part of this conference, and I love the fact that there's a focus on loneliness because it's so timely, as we all know. You may not know that the contemporary word loneliness actually derives from an 18th century term, oneliness. And that term at the time referred simply to solitude, simply to being with oneself. And it didn't have the same negative connotations or connotations for poor mental health the way it does today. In fact, the idea at the time was that even when somebody was by themselves, they were never truly alone, because the idea that God was always with you was present during that time. And so this idea of oneliness simply meant that you were sort of in solitude with yourself. But as time has passed and as we've better understood how important it is for humans to have social connection, what our need to belong does for us, our term loneliness has evolved to a point where we now understand it to mean a deficit in our desired level of social connection. There's a couple of things about that definition that I think are really important to point out. One is that loneliness is always a perception. It's never really about the objective level of social connection that we have. Like Julien said, it's not about the number of friends that we have. It's about our perception that our level of social connection is not where we wish it to be. And the other thing I want to point out about the definition, we sort of all understand this, I think, experientially, is that we don't have to be alone to be lonely. There are certainly times when we can be surrounded by other people and still feel that deficit in our minds, in our hearts, in our bodies, that we're just not as connected to the people around us as we wish that we were. If you have not experienced loneliness yourself, at least in a chronic or an especially intense state, it can be an easy experience to minimize or dismiss. I often draw a correlation here to depression. If you've not been depressed, it can be hard to understand why somebody who is depressed can't simply snap out of it. Just get happier, right? Just overcome, just do the things you do to get rid of that experience. It can be easy to have those thoughts. But of course, we understand loneliness to be much more serious than that. It's much more serious than just a nuisance. It's much more serious than just something that we're doing wrong in our lives that leads us to feel disconnected with others. In fact, and we learn more and more about this every day from research, loneliness correlates with a wide variety of some pretty serious health deficiencies. It significantly increases the likelihood of all-cause mortality, and certainly things like heart disease and stroke. Disordered eating is correlated with loneliness. Things like depression and anxiety, pain, sleep problems, dementias, stress, suppression of the immune system, up to and including its most serious correlates, which are suicide ideation and suicidality. So it's something to take seriously. And I think, again, we all understand that given the attention it has received, but when we don't go through that experience ourselves, it can be difficult to understand why we can't just say to somebody, hey, go out and meet somebody, get over yourself, get over your loneliness. Now, because loneliness refers to a deficit in our social connection, we all understand that it's something that probably can be improved with positive communication. Of course, that's our connection to being here today. I want to actually take that observation and turn it on its head a little bit this morning and say that although positive interpersonal communication is certainly important for fostering connection, for fostering emotional intimacy, and ultimately for combating loneliness, what I'm going to use my brief time this morning to talk about is actually positive intrapersonal communication, the communication that we have with ourselves, our self-talk. And there's a benefit to this because it actually provides us some sense of agency. When I am battling loneliness, I don't necessarily have to wait for my interpersonal circumstances to improve. There are things that I can do for myself. And the reason that positive intrapersonal communication, our self-talk, is so important is that we know from both research and clinical practice that when people are lonely, and especially when they're chronically lonely, they often suffer from a number of negative thought patterns. For example, if I'm lonely, I may believe that if I don't have any friends, it's because no one cares about me. That's what we would call in a clinical setting a cognitive distortion, a maladaptive cognition. But it's something that would be easy to believe if I feel really socially disconnected. Another example would be, I don't have anything of value to offer other people. I deserve to be lonely. It's easy for us to understand, I think, that if people have thoughts like this, the outcomes of those thoughts are not just cognitive. What happens is that our beliefs then end up driving our behaviors. Let's say I believe that nobody really cares about me. So that's a maladaptive belief that I may hold, but it then would go on to affect my actions so that if I get invited to a social event, I may talk myself out of accepting that invitation by thinking, well, they don't really want me there. Maybe they're just inviting me to be polite, but they don't really want my company. Or if I believe that I deserve to be lonely, that can affect my actions of not taking opportunities to go out, not taking opportunities to meet new people, because I believe that I'm getting what I deserve. And so when we allow a maladaptive cognition then to affect our actions in that way, what happens? Those beliefs get reinforced. And this becomes a dangerous cycle, not just because it's self-repeating, it's self-reinforcing, but as our beliefs get reinforced through our actions, those beliefs get strengthened. I believe even more strongly now that I deserve to be lonely or that I have nothing to offer someone else. And as anyone who has been in a situation like that will tell you, it's very much a feeling of stuckness, very much a feeling of, I am trapped in this cycle. And I just continue to do the same things over and over again because I just literally don't know what else to do to get myself unstuck. And that's what we need to do by disrupting that cycle. I'm going to suggest today that one constructive way to do that is through positive intrapersonal communication. If I can disrupt the cycle at the beginning and change those maladaptive beliefs to beliefs that are more functional for me, then those more functional beliefs will affect my actions. And then those more functional beliefs will come to be reinforced. So I've gotten myself out of that negative cycle. I'm going to share briefly 4 techniques. These are not the only techniques for disrupting that cycle, but they're 4 that in clinical practice are often used and reinforced with people who are going through difficult times like this. One of those techniques is to examine the evidence, is to do what we do as social scientists. Look at the evidence, look at the data for a particular belief. I might ask myself, where's the proof that no one cares about me? Where's the evidence for that? And if I'm being honest, if I'm examining that within myself, I may discover that really there is no proof. There is no evidence to support that belief. Or there's evidence, but I'm attending to it selectively. So I'm falling victim to a confirmation bias and only looking at pieces of evidence that support that belief and not at disconfirmatory evidence. So when we examine the data, we often realize that I don't really have the foundation for that belief that I thought I did. And that can make it easier to challenge that belief and to replace it with something more functional, which I'll talk about in a moment. A second technique is to change roles. This follows from the observation that many of us are more charitable, more generous with others than we are with ourselves. And so with this technique, I would ask myself, what would I say to someone else who told me, for example, that they deserve to be lonely? If that belief belonged to a friend of mine instead of to me, and they expressed it to me, what would I say back? Would I agree? Yeah, you deserve to be lonely. Yeah, no, of course not. No, of course not. I would dispute that. I would talk with them. I would ask them why they believe that, what good that belief is doing for them. I would encourage them to examine it, potentially to challenge it. So if I would do that for anyone else in my life, it's a reasonable question. Why wouldn't I do that for myself? And that's the technique of changing roles, putting myself in the shoes of someone else who is hearing me express the cognitive distortions that I have. A third, and this technique actually goes along with both of the first two that I've talked about, is to do something called finding the opposites, which is to ask myself, for example, what are 3 times today when I have been of value to someone else? Where's the counter evidence, in other words? And once again, if we're being honest with ourselves, if we're actually digging into our situation honestly and openly, we realize that we can easily find evidence that counters the beliefs that we have. I may believe that I have no value, but when I really think about it, I can articulate times when I've been of use, when I've been of help to someone else. And a fourth technique is to do a cost-benefit analysis. This is where we might ask ourselves the question, how does it help me to believe that I deserve to be lonely? And how does it hurt me to believe that? That first question might strike us as a little counterintuitive. How does it help me to believe something negative about myself? But often we find that negative self-beliefs are perpetuated because they actually do serve some function for someone. If I feel like I deserve to be lonely, that's not probably helping me in a big picture, but that sort of self-handicapping belief may actually be serving a function for me in the short run. It may be helping me to deal, let's say, with social anxiety. If I feel like I deserve to be lonely, I don't have to press myself to go out and be social with other people. So that may be the function that that belief is serving. And so I want to identify that. I want to look at how does it help me to have this belief? And now actually, how does it hurt me? How is it holding me back? This is a particularly important technique in this approach to dealing with something like loneliness, because when we deal with maladaptive cognitions in this way, particularly when we think about examining the evidence for them or finding the counter evidence to them, the question that we are often really grappling with is not so much, is the belief true, but is it functional? Is it helping me to have this belief about myself, or is it actually holding me back from accomplishing my goals, including my social goals? If I feel lonely, and if I feel chronically lonely in particular, it may very easily be the case that I'm holding myself back by the beliefs that I have. And so from a therapeutic perspective, we don't just want to challenge or counter the beliefs that an individual has. That's an important first step. But that has the goal, we have the end goal sort of replacing those with beliefs that are more functional. I don't deserve to be lonely. I do have things of value to offer other people. beliefs that actually allow me to pursue my social goals in a more functional and acceptable way. Once again, these are not the only techniques for more positive intrapersonal communication, but they're among the more commonly used in a therapeutic setting with loneliness and with many other conditions that tend to bring about and reinforce negative cognitions about ourselves. So that's my little contribution for us this morning. I really want to thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be here. I look forward to your questions and our conversation.
Thank you so much, Kory. Let's give Kory a big thank you for his presentation about the value of positive intrapersonal communication. We're actually going to have a chance here to really explore some of these ideas. Let me share my screen with you here right now. And here it is. So for those of you who are wanted to know more a little bit about Kory, I want to put one note before we kind of go to this dialogue that really surprised me. Is that I've read Kory's work many times, including his books and his articles, but I saw him in person at a panel at NC, a National Communication Association conference a few months ago. And one of the things that really truly amazed me was I was a panelist, so we didn't get a chance to connect, but I was just watching the room. There was about 40 people there. And Kory was the person who delivered the most hugs, hands down, in that space. And so not only is he really teaching communication, but in my mind, when I saw that, I saw him kind of exemplifying some of his work on the importance of affection, which we're about to explore here. I'm really thrilled to welcome my student and graduate student in the University of Arkansas Little Rock in the Department of Applied Communication, Shalonda Michelle, who is really a wonderful student in the department. And she's going to be our facilitator here as she explores the book that Kory wrote a couple of years ago called The Loneliness Cure. And she's going to lead the conversation, see where it takes us. Welcome to the stage, Shalonda.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Dr. Mirivel. Dr. Floyd, your book is amazing and couldn't have come at a better time for me. Hey. I am just in love with it. But I have to ask, why is affection so important?
Well, there's any number of reasons, but the one that comes to my mind is that we are inherently social and relational beings as humans. For us, social connection and intimacy and affection, these aren't optional. We need them in our lives. And it doesn't mean we all need the same level of affection, but nobody needs none. It's something that I think is sort of baked into our DNA. And it really, in my mind, it really goes back to how we enter the world as brand new infants, completely helpless, completely at the mercy of someone else to care for us, to meet all of our needs. And it takes a pretty powerful emotional experience to motivate somebody to do that, and to do it repeatedly and to do it voluntarily. And I think in many ways that is the genesis of that emotional experience of affection that we have, and then certainly the behaviors that follow from it.
Well, in your book, you talk about, I've never heard anyone explain the need for loneliness, like food, water, and shelter. I was like, oh my gosh, it is really that important to our lives. Could you tell us what are some behaviors of affection and communication?
Such as ways that people express it?
Yeah, what are some behaviors, yes,
Yeah.
we can express?
Yeah, obviously we express affection verbally quite often, telling our loved ones that we love them, that we care about them. Also asking about their day, expressing care, expressing concerns, social support, things like that. So we do that with spoken language. We do it with written language, texting these days as well. A lot of our affection is nonverbal. And so in some cultures, that takes the form of kissing and hugging and holding hands. There's a fair amount of cultural variation around the world in the ways that people express affection non-verbally. And then we've also learned over the years that people use supportive actions as a way to show their loved ones that they care about them. So I help you with a project, or I volunteer to drive you to the airport, or to assist you when you're ill or something like that. And I do that because I care about you, and you interpret that support as an expression of my care. So that's sort of a covert way, not quite as overt as saying that I love you or putting my arms around you, but it can be just as meaningful.
Wow, I love it. Seems like the cure of loneliness is in itself positive communication being enforced in our lives. I would have to also ask another question I thought would be important to look at is, what are some other behaviors that you see as important to curing, or the cure to loneliness?
Yeah, I should point out I've never really liked that title of the book. That was not my choosing. That was the publisher stepping in and thinking that that would be more catchy. But I don't like the title because it sort of implies that there is a kind of a magic cure, like just take this pill or take this
Yeah.
vaccine and you're suddenly going to be better.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a misnomer. It's a process. And one of the reasons I point that out is that the things that are going to help an individual get through loneliness are going to vary, because the reasons why we become lonely vary. For some of us, we have sort of a disposition to loneliness, and for others, it's a change in our circumstances. There can be any number of reasons why we find ourselves in that situation. And so what works for one person isn't necessarily going to be a magic cure for everyone else. I think it's really important to get to your question before talking about ways to treat it for yourself. It's really important to do a process of self-examination, trying to figure out, how did I get from a point when I didn't feel lonely to the point now where I do? What has changed in my life? What has changed externally? And what role have I played? How have I changed in that period of time? Because I think that gives really important clues as to what might be a path out. How have I sort of gotten myself stuck, if I have, in that self-reinforcing spiral? And then what can I do to get myself unstuck?
So it's really important to look at the causation of your loneliness.
I really think so. Yeah, I really think so, because it's not the same for everybody.
I like this so much, and I like this opportunity of being here with you today. Another question is, why do humans show affection, and how does it relate to curing loneliness?
Well, I think that it's just, it's part of how we've evolved, and we're not alone in that. When we look around the animal kingdom, you see many, many examples of affection. And so one of the things that sort of implies to me is that our tendency to show affection, our disposition to be affectionate as humans, is not something that we learn. Rather, it's something that we're born with. Now, we learn how to do it. And culturally, certain ways of showing affection get reinforced, modeled for us, for example. But I believe that the tendency to be affectionate is something that is actually innate, is something that we're actually born with, because it really does serve that imperative that we have as humans of forming and maintaining relationships. We are not like some of our cousins in the animal kingdom who, once they are weaned from their mothers, they really live the rest of their lives in solitude. That's fine for them. They've evolved that way. We have not. That's not healthy for us. And so affection is, I think, a way to certainly establish new relationships. Many of us in long-term relationships can remember the first time we said, "I love you," to the other person, the first time we hugged, the first time we kissed. Those can be critical turning points in the development of a relationship, and also very important in the maintenance of relationships. We know from marital research that a lack of affection or a decrease in affection is one of the most common complaints when couples go for marital therapy, when they are contemplating separation or divorce. We're not as affectionate. I'm not receiving as much affection as I used to. So it clearly plays a role, I think a really central role, in our ability to meet our need to belong on an ongoing basis. And that's why I think so often when we feel lonely, that's one of the symptoms that we notice the most, is I just feel really deficient in
I'm
terms
so
of the
sorry.
amount of,
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Floyd. That is unfortunately all the time we have.
oh, that's quite all right. It's quite all right.
You
Thank
have
you
just
so
been
much for your
so
question.
amazing. Oh, you're welcome.
Oh.
You've been so amazing. And I can't wait to dive more into your book. For those that would like to get in touch with Dr. Floyd, we have placed a link in the chat, a link to his book, a link to his website. Please reach out to Dr. Floyd. This book is phenomenal. Thank you so much. I'm going to give
Thank
the
you
floor
so
back
much.
to
I
Dr.
really
Mirivel.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Shalonda. Let's give Kory and Shalonda some big applause. I know we can't hear everybody clapping, but let's do it symbolically
our
for their
affection.
work and share our affection. Thank you so much, Kory, for your presentation and for being part of the Positive Communication Network today. The rest of the conference is going to continue to explore these themes, and we're going to start right away. I want to take a moment to introduce the members of the Positive Communication Network. So let me do a couple things before we transition here. The first thing that you should know is we do have some sponsors who have helped us along the way. And that's the Department of Applied Communication at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock, which is funding for us this Eventbrite event. It does cost money, and we're really so grateful that they were able to support it, as well as the support we receive from the Communication Skills Center, also part of the Department of Applied Communication, which helped us to put together these wonderful slides. So students did work behind the scenes to make this happen. So I want to thank them for their work. The Positive Communication Network was founded in 2022 with a group of people that are amazing. And so I want to give each person a chance to tell you a little bit about who they are. We are missing a few colleagues. Dr. Kristen Chrisman, who is at UNC Greensboro, could not make it today, as well as Dr. Ryan Fuller, who is an associate professor of business at CSU Sacramento. But the rest of the crew is here. So next we have Dr. Phil Glenn, professor of communication, Emerson College. Phil, do you want to say hi?
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Phil Glenn. So glad to be part of this and to see so many boxes on the screen today. I conduct research in conversation analysis. I'm really interested in patterns of talk and how we can point those towards constructive engagement in laughter, in dialogue, and so forth. I'm also a trainer and mediator, and so these practices are near and dear to my heart in those ways as well. Thanks for being together today.
Thanks so much, Phil. Next, we have Dr. Maggie Pitts, who is a faculty member at University of Arizona, but also serves as Senior Associate Dean. Maggie, do you want to say hello to the group?
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It is so great to have you here. I'm especially grateful for those of you on video so I can see your expressions change as you're receiving what we're sharing today. We hope that you'll join us in the Positive Communication Network. My area of, I think, application of positive communication is certainly within leadership at the University of Arizona in my role as an associate dean, but my research is on communication savoring and building a grounded theoretical model that I will introduce to you later in this session. And I hope that you will gain tips for how to enhance your positive communication, enhance those connections from our series and our group today. It's so nice to meet you.
Thanks so much, Maggie. Next, we have Dr. Amy Young, who is a faculty member in the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Amy, you want to say hello to the group?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Great to see you. So glad that we have a great group today. So I study leadership communication and organizations and how you can create great workplaces by really focusing on the way that we interact with each other and the way we communicate with each other. I work directly with leaders and I'm out in the field a lot, trying to make, the workplace a better place. We spend so much time there. And just a little bit of attention to the way that we interact with each other can have a huge impact on how well we're doing at work.
Thanks so much, Amy. And last but not least, you're going to hear from Dr. Tom Socha, who is a professor of communication at Old Dominion University. For those of you, I'm sure everybody here knows Tom, but he's been the leader really in the field of communication to bring this focus on the positive side. Started with a volume called The Positive Side of Interpersonal Communication, edited with Maggie Pitts, and it really created a wave of research that we can benefit today. So I'm so glad to have Tom as part of this community and welcome him to transition, because now we're going to focus a little bit on research. So we're going to move to the next part of the program, which is positive communication research. Moving from loneliness to connection, we'll have some panelists focused on the topic of loneliness, and then some panelists focused on the topic of connection. So Tom, the floor is yours, and thanks for leading us next.
Fantastic, Julien, and let's not forget Julien Mirivel, the leader of the bunch. I refer to him as the Dean of Positive Communication. He's done tremendous work in his effort here with the network and being sponsored with UNC or with Arkansas and all the rest. Just absolutely fantastic, and we appreciate him greatly. And his book, on the art of positive communication, certainly is it was a hit in terms of the model and getting our thinking going and doing some great things. So this morning we've got a two-part panel sort of thing going. What we're going to do is ask some of the panelists who are with us to share some of their ideas, and we're going to focus a little bit on loneliness first, and connecting there and relationships. And then we've got the three individuals. I hope they're all here. I'm not sure if I see them all in the chat. If not, we will make do. But we'll first include Michelle Miller-Day from Chapman. We could talk a little bit about her stuff, and Narissa Punyanet-Carter, and then Hakan Ozelik from Cal State Sacramento, and Narissa's Texas Tech. And I'm at Old Dominion University here in Norfolk, Virginia, and Virginia Beach. And what we're going to do is, what I do over here is focus on, besides positive communication, a little bit about food, a little bit about relationships, a little bit about lifespan communication. And, it's gratifying to me just to see all the fantastic people, not only here in attendance today, but all the people that have committed their ideas. One of the things I'm working on currently is a new handbook for positive communication with Paul Gray McMillan, and there's just there's about 60 authors that are contributing to it, and they're just it's really absolutely amazing. And people, this is really unusual among scholars. You give them a deadline of July for chapters, and then you might get it in August, or end of July. I actually have gotten chapters already for the Handbook of Positive Communication. Patrice Busnell, 3 days later, banged out this incredible chapter. She was so excited about it. And that's the cool thing about these ideas. Once they take hold, people get excited and interested about it. What I wanted to do is sort of set in motion something that I saw this morning. I put it into the chat. Here we go. There's a link to an NPR story that I heard this morning about two friends in Alaska. And these friends, their conversation literally has helped them to stay alive, because many of their friends that are in Alaska have chosen to end their lives prematurely. And the difference you'll hear in that story or conversation is messages made the difference. Right. It's just their messages between them that made the difference. Going out and being together made the difference between them. So I put it in the chat so you could take a look at the NPR story. But Michelle is with us. I have not seen Narissa or Hakan yet. All right. Julien, you don't see them in the list of things?
Yep, they're here. They're ready to go.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, let's start with Michelle first. And Michelle is absolutely an incredible human being as well as researcher. I just love her work. She does mother-daughter communication. It's a fantastic book out. Drug Prevention with Michael Hecht. Unbelievable research program there on keeping it real. I love that work, and I love the things that she's been doing there. she's been working related to loneliness on the topic of suicide, and we need her voice in there a little bit to give us a framework for talking about suicide and suicide prevention and loneliness and how we can really do a good thing. So Michelle, do you want to give us your take, about 3-5 minutes or so?
Oh, sure. One thing that I want to say is I didn't know what Kory was going to be talking about. And actually, some of the things that I'm talking about here today kind of, that segues directly into what I want to talk about. Suicidality, let's just talk about that for a minute, and then I'll talk a little bit about my research. You want me to talk about some research that I'm doing, right? It's not just my opinions about things. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen. I'm actually, may I share my screen?
Yes, you can now.
All right, awesome. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. I can keep talking until that happens. Yeah, and I do mother-daughter research. I do work in suicide. The mother-daughter stuff actually was coming to my mind as you guys were talking earlier on, because some of the research I'm doing right now with daughtering, think about that. You don't hear that word much, right? Especially younger women or young adults. They think they're the receptacles of affection. They're on the receiving end, and they don't think a whole lot about their agency and responsibility and that reciprocity in relationships with others in terms of providing affection. Let's
You
see.
can share your screen now.
I can do it. Yay! Here we go. So that's one thing that I'm doing as well. But in terms of suicide and loneliness, I love this study here by McClellan and Evans et al. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It said that Zoom connectedly. This meta-analysis of about 947 studies. Again, linking is
I think we lost her.
Looks like we've lost Michelle. Maybe she'll come back.
Yeah, it's one of those, NBC technical difficulties. Let's go to the real.
And maybe we can introduce our next panelists, and then Michelle can pick back up.
Carter. Narissa, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
There you are.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So my specialty is father-daughter communication. So kind of ties in,
And Michelle's back. Fantastic. Good.
Okay, but that's okay. Go ahead, Narissa.
No.
Yeah, we're all together. We're all eventually going to be together. So you're good.
Okay. Well, lately my focus has been on social media. So I've looked at social media and loneliness, especially with college students. And what we find is that there's higher tendencies with social media use and the rate of levels of perceptions of loneliness, right? So if the person spends 3 to 5 hours or more on social media platforms, they're more likely to report that they're lonely. They're more likely to report ideas, fixations of suicidal thoughts, depression, mental health issues, so forth. One of the things that coincides with all the other research that's been published in the medical health research as well, in psychiatry and so forth. One of the things that we find with college students is that the more times that they spend on social media platforms, they also report that they feel worse about those things. Social media is a tool to connect with others, but yet they don't feel that sense of connection. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to discuss and bring about too. But we can toss it back to Michelle. That's fine.
Yes. Back to you, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm hoping this isn't my share screen thing that's doing this, but basically what I wanted to talk about, it comes out of Kory's book actually today. Is this notion that can you see my screen, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I'm beginning. There we go. This notion of one way to prevent loneliness is to resist toxic affection. So not just that everybody knows how to give affection, give and receive affection, right? That there is such a thing as toxic affection. And individuals with whom, and I know everybody's been in this situation, people that you're with and surrounded with, and you're still lonely, and you can still feel lonely in terms of that. Affection can be weaponized. It is a resource. It's something that can be given. It's something that can be withheld. I know we're talking about the positive ends of things, but for me, I like to understand how things go wrong so that then we can turn it on its head to learn a little bit more about kind of the positive orientation and how we can correct that. My research, I do some testing on necessary convergence communication theory, which is basically the idea. I mean, you can read that in terms of things, but interpersonal communication where you're always deferent to the other person, because if you're not, there are consequences, right? This individual will threaten to withdraw their love, affection, eye contact. You're not my son, you're not my daughter, you're not whatever, unless, you agree with me or you have my same beliefs, you do what I say. So I look at parent, adult, child convergence communication on suicidality. And one thing I've learned at, and we've done several studies and found relationships between this convergence communication and this chronic deference to eating disorders, self-harming behaviors, cutting behaviors, substance abuse, suicidality. And what I mean by suicidality is suicidal ideation, as well as suicidal behaviors, like suicide attempts, as well as completed suicides in terms of that. But one thing that we learned too in this is that, yes, there's this direct effect, this direct relationship between this kind of communication style and suicidality. But when we do qualitative work with these people, we find out that there's exactly what Kory was talking about is this self-talk, the function of this negative self-talk. I'm going to go really quickly through what is necessary convergence because a lot of people may not know what it is. It explains how this chronic submission to these people who are wielding aggression as a weapon, so to speak, how it places them at risk for negative outcomes, that they feel it's necessary to converge with the other person, believe what they believe, their meanings are coordinated, the interactions are coercive rather than cooperative. And again, there's this convergence of meaning. People who in these kinds of interactions, sometimes they feel very lonely, actually. There are some relationships to loneliness where they can't think for themselves, judge for themselves. They pretty much are different to everybody around them to create the world around them and make sense of the world around them. I'm not going to go into a whole big thing about this, but by the fact that my partner dominates interactions with their views, their ideas, their values, their meanings, and this has convinced me that their needs are more important than mine, and so I'm constantly deferent to that. And they will withdraw or provide affection based on my deference to them and my interactions with them. So created a scale to be able to measure this, have found relationships with eating disorder, substance use, depression, and suicidality. Again, what suicidality is, it's related to contemplating, attempting, or completing suicide. Now I'm going to slow down for this. So here's just some quotes from people in some of the qualitative research. I sometimes get so annoyed that I let, in this case, my mother do my thinking for me. My God, I'm an adult. I should be able to think for myself. I'm who and whatever she wants me to be. And when I tried to kill myself, I was finally taking my fate into my own hands. I had some control and I thought for myself for once. Again, that cognitions, pulling cognitions into the experience of suicidality. I'm not going to read this one, the whole thing, but this is someone who had an eating disorder and talked a lot about that self-talk, about I had this frequently engaged in this negative self-talk, just talking myself into it, and what my experiences are. And a lot of people talk about how lonely they are within the context of relationship. Our identity is developed in relationship, right? And a lot of these people talk about how lonely they are actually in the context of many relationships. So what is self-talk? It's that inner speech, right? we all do it, right? We all have inner monologues that we engage in from time to time. Self-talk is self-referenced speech. It plays a bunch of different roles, like emotional regulation, coping, perspective taking. If you don't know this theory, dialogic self-theory, which is really interesting, Hermans and Geiser in 2012, actually talk about the dialogues we have with ourselves. It's not just me and me. It's me with me thinking about Kory in my head, or me thinking about Dr. Socha in my head, with others that I balance and have these dialogues with myself. I'm researching specifically self-talk, and rather than these dialogues, but this real brief, study that we recently did, 269 university students, kind of looking at this convergence communication for people who have that. Does self-talk, because we already know, or that convergence communication heightens your risk for suicidality and depression, by the way. But what is the role of self-talk? So basically there were no differences, no statistically significant differences between sons and daughters in terms of having this convergence communication, although sons, there are more percentage of sons who report it. And then we ran mediation models to look and see if it mediates self-talk, negative self-talk mediated the relationship. And lo and behold, for those of you who are researchers, it certainly does. We looked at dads specifically, we looked at moms specifically, and then we looked at both parents. So it used to be a direct relationship are now insignificant relationships because we're accounting for this negative self-talk. This negative self-talk actually pulled away all of that, not all, but a lot of the influence of this convergence communication on suicidality. So really the functioning factor here is this negative self-talk, these negative cognitions. So I have these toxic affection and it's an involuntary relationship, parent-child, in these cases, parent-child, right? There is research on this of in romantic relationships also with dominant submissive partners. But we can resist toxic affection, but we don't have to resist or reject the person. So kind of exactly what Dr. Floyd was talking about. With positive intrapersonal communication, disrupting that cycle of negative self-talk, those maladaptive cognitions. As you said, examine the evidence, change roles, find the opposites, do a cost-benefit analysis, and know that I can still love the person, but reject the manipulative behavior.
Right. Wow, thank you. We'll have some time for discussion questions, but I want to hear from our other two panelists, Narissa, Punyan, and Carter. If you want to come in and give us your take. Narissa is at Texas Tech, and as she mentioned earlier, studies relationships and has published a whole bunch of stuff. So Narissa, you want to jump in? And she also got elected, by the way, to the ascending to the presidency of the Southern States Communication Association. So she's going to be leading that association soon.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna leave time for our last speaker because I already spoke a little bit and I added an article in the chat. So I wanted to give some time because I know we only have until 12:05, I believe, for our next panel. So that's fine. Why don't we leave some time?
Yeah, you're
for our
fine.
third panel?
If you want to take a few moments, we are flexible, if anything.
Oh, okay. That's okay. I'll let our last panelist go ahead and talk too.
And then we can share in discussion. Hakan, are you with us? There he is.
You're still muted.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon.
There he is. Excellent. Hakan is a professor who focuses on loneliness at work. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. And it's my pleasure to be here. What a group of people to talk about loneliness. And I like the twist, Julien, the positive communication twist on the topic. And for a reason, because We are not talking about depression today, which is a very serious clinical phenomena. But loneliness is an emotion that each one of us can get in and out depending on the circumstances. And yet there are certain mechanisms that makes it sometimes difficult to deal with. I would like to do a couple of things. First, I would like to share my quick reflections about these fantastic conversations happening this morning for a couple of minutes. And then I'll give you a quick overview of some conceptual findings from my research. So I really love this idea of self-talk phenomena, which tells a lot about how people actually make themselves even lonelier, or they can step out of loneliness by changing the way they look at things. But I also want to add a couple of things in there that loneliness is not just about the individual. I mean, there are the external, the environmental factors that play into the process. And based on what we have been talking about here, and I love this phenomena of this attention we give, and I think one big challenge we have as a society, at the societal level, is that, which is there are collectivistic cultures where affection is in abundance, in a way that people actually feel lonely because they are extremely well taken care of emotionally, or maybe too much. And then you got these individualistic cultures where everybody's got their space and everybody, by definition, has respect. So, which is good in both ways and challenging in both ways. But at the same time, though, we need to think about what happens to a lonely person in those cultures. So if you're a lonely person in a collectivistic culture, it's likely that people will come at you and they just snap you out of it. But since they might be doing too much of it, you might all of a sudden feel like, you are not being yourself. But in an individualistic society, if an individual decides to be lonely, sky is the limit, because we respect so much the person's personal space that if the space is filled with all these self-talks, we don't have the room to navigate, to change those self-talks in a not only psychological, but interpersonal manner. So that's one thing. The other thing is the survival aspect of loneliness. We are programmed to be social, and there's a reason why we feel lonely, because that emotion tells us that we should do certain things so that we can get out of our comfort zones to build new relationships. So, and that's ingrained in our species, because our neural system is hardwired in a way that we are immediately aware of our environment when we feel lonely. Because in the tribes, our ancestors, the worst thing that you can do is to let yourself lonely or alone and ostracized from the tribe in the wilderness. So we really want to make sure that we are connected, and that's why in modern life our response is so exponential that we don't know how to deal with. But it is that how much survival based that is. And then the third one is the self-developmental side of loneliness. And I love this aspect of, do I deserve to be lonely? Well, sometimes maybe we deserve to be lonely. And I never thought about that until this morning, that because loneliness gives us information about our relationships, and we maybe give so much empathy to the lonely person that we might ignore the learning aspect of loneliness. If I'm lonely, which means that I don't feel close to anybody, it might be that I'm doing sorts of things that kind of, strains those relationships. So what can I do to change that course of actions or interactions and not reach out to people? Be tough on yourself and learn about, what other people are feeling about you. It's not an easy job, but it might be a great start if you have the inner power to confront loneliness. So these are the reflections. And the research part, so I'm going to switch the focus to workplace environments from family, which I found fascinating. The workplace loneliness is equally profound. And we know that loneliness comes in cycles, as we've already heard earlier this morning, that lonely people in the first phase of loneliness, when you move to a new city, when you get a new job, when you get a new position, it's okay to feel lonely because things have changed. And actually, it's good to be lonely because it pushes you to reconfigure your social environment. Mm-hmm. But if the earlier attempts of loneliness, which is reaching out to people, doesn't work, then all of a sudden, people start acting in ways that become self-defeating. And I think that's where the positive communication comes in, that how can we help people to get out of their loneliness in that first phase without pushing them to the second loop where things get really self-destructive.
Mhm.
The second aspect is, and that's what we have found in our research in work organizations that I'll be summarizing in a minute. The second aspect is the stigma aspect of loneliness. We don't want to talk about our loneliness. Not only that, in a neurological study, fMRI study, we have found that actually people also don't want to register lonely people to their social memories. Like we might have this almost inner bias about the lonely people. And I think that needs more exploration. And another aspect of loneliness specific to work organizations is that in our study with my late co-author Sigal Barsait, we have studied loneliness experienced at work and then looked at how that affected people's attitudes and performance. About performance, yes, we have found a significant relationship. Lonelier employees actually perform less. So it speaks to the bottom line. It's not just about being a nice person to help a lonely coworker. If you want to be a manager who is thinking about the bottom line, you still need to take care of your employees' loneliness. More importantly, what we have found is that from our lens today, for our lens today, is that lonely people, lonely employees were perceived to be less approachable by their coworkers. So which kind of ties into this regulatory loop model of loneliness, in that when an employee feels lonely, they send signals, verbal or non-verbal, cues to their work environment that I'm not an approachable person, because we ask the coworkers of each employee, is this coworker approachable? And then we ask the employee whether you feel lonely, and we found very significant relationships, and that mediated the relationship between loneliness and performance.
Right.
And the other aspect of that is also lonely employees started generalizing their relationships to the organization. My coworker around me doesn't like me. The people in my team, they don't like me. Hence, nobody in this organization likes me. We make that jump so quickly that it becomes self-defeating. And the last but not the least, we have been doing a research during the pandemic about loneliness. It was a historical opportunity that we're about to study loneliness in a city, and then pandemic started, where you got these 3 great samples of people who were completely from home for the first time in their lives, self-quarantining, and then the essential employees completely worked on site, and those employees who worked hybrid. And the big question, and still is like, which ones felt lonely? And so after about 2.5 months of full self-quarantining in California, we collected the data, and our results show that loneliness did not differ among those 3 groups. So no matter where you worked, you could have felt lonely or not feel lonely. So the modality where you worked did not really affect the loneliness aspect. And that spoke a lot also at my intuition at the time, because being a loneliness expert, a lot of people started approaching you during the pandemic. Oh, we are all quarantining. Are we going to feel lonely? Is the world going to be a miserable place?
Right.
And I said, no, I don't think that's going to happen. Something else is happening here. And actually, we started producing some Wisdom Studio episodes that I will post the link here, so you can have a look at them. I was really working hard to let as many people know that this is not about loneliness. Loneliness is something different, but there's also social isolation that we need to be careful about.
Right.
But to tie that in, what we have found is that like where you work did not really matter, but the quality of your relationships, wherever you worked, whether on site, as a police officer, or working fully quarantining from home as an administrative employee, or a hybrid manager going back and forth, the quality of the relationships predicted loneliness very significantly. And our very recent finding has shown that about 21 months later, we got our time to data. People are back to work. And we're really curious about what's happening. One thing that we have found is that although loneliness in general did not change, what we have found is that people who started the journey of pandemic lonely got even lonelier at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
And people who were not lonely at the beginning, they still are not lonely.
Okay.
So that shows the robust aspect of this, emotion, the phenomena, which I'm drawn into this field for more than 17 years now. That is a fascinating topic that deserves a lot of attention that we are giving today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, your comments have gotten me thinking and have gotten everyone thinking. And we were gonna have a bit of a discussion, but I think what I'm gonna do is change this up and move on to the next group, and then ask everyone to hang around, and maybe we could have a big discussion if there's time remaining. I think that's where we're at. So let's move on to sort of part two of this, is looking at some of the connection research. What I want to do is introduce everybody up front first. And then ask them to jump in. So and we don't necessarily need to use slides, although we can. Andy Marola, are you with us from UC? There he is, Andy, our old buddy Andy, great guy. You can see there what Andy's doing and the kinds of things he's up to out there in Santa Barbara at the University of California. And then we've got Natalie Pennington, right? She's Colorado State. Natalie, are you with us? Yep, there she is. Dr. Pennington focuses on social connection. And she's got some large-scale projects that she's been working on relationships and health guides and lots of great stuff. But we're so really excited to hear from her in Colorado. And then we've got Bailey Oliver Blackburn, who's with Julien at UNC Little Rock. And she's been working on studies of peak experiences related to loneliness and relationships. And she's also been on NPR One, so we'll have to hear a little bit about that. She's famous. And then, of course, we've got and Bailey's with Julien, our illustrious founder. Julien has done so many things, his TED Talks and books on positive communication. The most recent one, Positive Communication for Leaders, we just did a book party on. Everybody needs to read that and add that to your reading list if you've not done that already. And then we've got Maggie Pitts, the inevitable Maggie Pitts. She's a co-founder of the network. I've known Maggie forever. She's absolutely an incredible human being, and mother and wife and deaning. She's deaning now over at the University of Arizona, and she's been digging savoring and learning about savoring for a while. So why don't we have each of these folks, Andy and then Natalie and Bailey and Maggie, give us each a little bit of a taste of what your research is up to and what you've been up to regarding the topic of connection and loneliness, and move us in that direction. Then we'll invite back in Michelle and Hakan and Narishra to have a big old discussion about research before Julien gives us the axe and has us move on and other things. I hate for that to happen. All right, Andy, jump in.
Well, thank you for having me, and what a wonderful conference you've all set up here. So thank you. I think, and we've heard so many wonderful concepts, and I think the thing that I can contribute is just thinking about these small moments of connection that happen. And, at any given moment may not seem significant, but certainly in the aggregate, that matters a lot, right? So these potentially big effects that small moments of connection can happen. And that really fascinates me because these play out in talk, right? And we know that at the momentary level, a moment of, say, responsiveness, Harry Reese's concept of responsiveness, which I like, is this overarching concept of validation, respect, and care that happens with strangers as much as it can happen with our loved ones. These momentary experiences, can increase connection, certainly. But what we also see is that it's a cycle, as many speakers have talked about. And one of the things my research has found with other people is that this can happen within a day, where not only does a positive moment of interaction predict better feelings throughout the day, but better feelings earlier in the day can put you in a frame of mind to seek out those connections. And that's great. And it's really encouraging. But that also suggests there's a whole lot of people who aren't getting it. It's a cycle of reinforcement, right? And there's both individual and structural processes that can make connection and those moments more likely. And so those are the people we especially need to be on the lookout for, right? And so when we have more to give, I think it's important that we do so. And I think that's a takeaway at a very high level from a lot of this research is not everybody's in a position to gain connection, but some of us are in a privileged position to do so. And so I'm really fascinated by that idea. And then the last thing I'll offer is that connection matters for a variety of reasons. And the topic I'm really fascinated by is hope. And I think hope, as from hope theory, the idea of pursuing our dreams and our goals rooted in these specific pathways and this sense of efficacy or agency. And the finding that I get really excited about is that these small moments of connection, they are the stuff of our goal pursuits, and we feel, especially for children, they feel capable. They feel excited about pursuing the things that matter most to them when we talk in a way that validates who they believe they are and want to be. And then these little moments add up, of course, right? Which isn't mind-blowingly original, but I think can't be underscored enough. And the research, supports that. So I'll leave it there because there's so many wonderful speakers. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. I know you've done some great work in hope in the healthcare context with our colleague Gary Beck, and you absolutely, we welcome you. And we're really happy that you're with us today. Natalie, you want to jump in?
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for having me, especially Julien. It's great to connect at NCA. I think I was on a panel with you and Andy, and so it's fun to see both of you again. I'll talk quickly two sort of different studies that I think were for me the biggest things that stand out about social connection. So a lot of my research is about friendship. And so one of the things in particular, and this is actually I'm finding from a study that me and Jeff Hall and Andy did together, and I'll drop that in the link. It is open access. So in that study, we were really interested in different experiences and ways we could use different types of technology to overcome disconnection or help people feel more connected. And in the study that I led from that, we actually asked people to describe their experiences or times in their life where they had a high or low social connection. And then from that experience, saying, how can we use different technologies? And this did end up not being a big part of the final study, but stuck with me and is something that I've been exploring since, which is that when we asked people to describe their experience of, a time period, so we're not saying like a single day, but a time where you felt really connected or really disconnected, that experience of connection was often tied to friends. And so it was, I have regular or routine interactions with people who I consider friends. And a big part of that was the workplace. So absolutely ties back to, I think we were saying, where it's not where you work, but who you work with, right? You feel connected. You love having people at work that you want to go see. You're gelling, you're getting along. But then also people are like, I have a trivia group that I see every week, or I get together with my friend. So having those routine interactions with people seems to be a big part of feeling like you're connected and a part of something, which I think is really important. When people are experiencing disconnection, one of those findings from the study was that phone calls in particular are something that are actually really helpful for us. So when we think about if we're not close to people, and people seem to hate phone calls, like we prefer to text more often, but phone calls are really one of the ones that tends to kind of be especially helpful for us. The second study that I'll mention, and I think very much ties to several things people have been saying today, and maybe especially think about when Kory was sharing during the Q&A section after his fantastic keynote opening, is that really small speech acts can help us feel more connected. So I collaborated with a few different colleagues where we were looking at how different speech acts might help us increase our daily well-being. So at the start of the day, asked people to share sort of where they were at, gave them a different speech act to engage in that day, and then tested again at the end of the day. And what we found is that all of them increased people's well-being, which was fantastic. So no one thing is better than the other. But what's important about that is that it doesn't have to be big, deep, meaningful conversations. And I think sometimes when we think about connection, we assume like the big things, and that can be really energy intensive for people, especially if you're feeling disconnected or lonely. So even the small things like joking around or catching up or just reaching out and saying, hey, those help us feel more connected as well. And so I think that's one of the most important takeaways for me. Thanks for having me. I'm Allette and said we got so many people, and so if people have questions, let me know, and I'll drop a couple links in the chat as well to these things.
Perfect. Yes, and I appreciate that. And in the chat, we've also had links into the CUB Organizational Wisdom Studio. Hakan wants to hear from all of us because you guys are, the key people, and getting your perspective is wonderful. I appreciate it very much, Natalie. Thank you. Thank you. And Bailey, Oliver Blackburn, and Julien, the team there at Little Rock, to talk a little bit about peak experiences.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm the graduate coordinator and assistant professor in the Department of Applied Communication at UA Little Rock alongside Julien. I'm a certified group facilitator. I am a trained mediator, and I mostly study conflict management, but also resilience in restructured families. And so that's mostly step families, post-divorce families. So you can kind of just imagine with that resilience focus and constructive conflict management focus that I love positive communication. And that's kind of the spin that I take on a lot of my studies, especially that mostly study the hardships of step families. That's great, but what can we do? So I take kind of that resilience positive spin. I worked with Dr. Julien Mirivel on another study outside step families that I want to speak to you just a little bit about today. And what we were looking at was peak communicative moments reported by adults. And there was about 27 interviews conducted and about 94 peak communicative moments were mentioned. And if you wonder what that term means, peak communicative moments are really any moments where, you know, the spoken word of someone has a positive impact on us, how we feel about ourselves, or how we view our relationships. And we were specifically looking for the most memorable peak communicative moments. So ones that stick with people months or even years down the line. So we were interested in, and what we qualitatively coded for was what really was the critical communication behaviors that shaped and informed these experiences. So in short, how did communication contribute to these memorable peak communicative moments? Well, we found that there were really three communicative practices that contributed to these memorable peak communicative moments. And those were disclosing, encouraging, and complimenting. So disclosing is exactly, you know, what you probably know the term as. This is recalling a significant or memorable time where the participant or someone else shared or revealed information about themselves. This appeared to be memorable in a peak communicative moment because it allowed them to reveal feelings or information about themselves or hear this from someone else, and that helped develop a deeper, more intimate relationship. So disclosing included, you know, verbalized affectionate communication, so similar to what Kory was talking about at the start, or revealing novel or previously unknown information. For example, one of our participants talked about hearing their parent talk about an experience they had growing up. They could learn about this parent in a new and novel way, and they felt closer, that deepened that relationship because of disclosing. The second one was encouraging, so moments where the participants offered or received encouragement. And these moments appeared significant because it was either unexpected encouragement or it was pivotal to them in adapting or getting through some kind of personal crisis or hardship. So social support or esteem support in time of need. Stories of encouragement to make a needed and necessary change. So I'm encouraging you because this will help you because it's needed and here's why I care about you. Or some kind of encouragement that kind of reiterated their identity or reaffirmed who they are and what they were capable of. And the last one was complimenting. So moments where people verbalize compliments, such as complimenting their behavior, accomplish, or personality trait. So all in all, those three behaviors, disclosing, encouraging, and complimenting, those aren't extraordinary things. They don't take a lot of time, practice, resources, but those everyday communicative acts were essential in connecting with people, in building and deepening relationships. And of course, that can assist with feelings of loneliness and connection as well. So happy to share more about that study in Q&A.
Thank you. Awesome work. And it's in the chat already that we're all having peak communication experiences currently. So it's all outstanding. Maggie, you want to give us a little bit about what you got going on with Save Room?
Absolutely. I want to really emphasize this idea that connection matters. And paying attention to those connections really matters. So as we go about our daily life, we might be exposed to opportunities, both like Andy is saying, to give and be generous with our positive communication with micro moments of connection, but also to be aware when we're receiving it. And so when I talk about communication savoring, I'm talking about savoring as a psychological state where we are open and present to the goodness around us, and that we can capitalize on and relish in and really drink in these pleasurable or meaningful moments in our life. And when we have a mindset that is seeking these micro moments,
50, 50?
Sorry,
Okay.
and I think you can hear me. When we have these micro moments of positive communication, that it allows us to expand our feelings of connection and extend our compassion and create resilience with humanity and with our close personal connections, but also those that we don't know personally. So my research is on a certain form of savoring. It's communication savoring, looking at interactions that are in the moment, in the past, or even interactions in the future that provide hope, that provide silliness, that provide a sense of affection and being cared for, and just communication moments that we delight in. How I came to this form of research was working with Tom on the first 2 books on communication, positive communication. And we wondered if, like in Italy, where we should go next, where they have this slow food movement to slow things down and enjoy what life has to offer, can we have a slow communication movement and really savor in the gift that is being present in our closest connections? And so we'll fast forward to where I am now with the research, and I'll stop kind of belaboring this moment of beauty and communication. But through a series of studies, qualitative interviews, narrative studies, experimental design, and surveys, we have both identified that communication savoring is a unique construct, that it has positive outcomes on relational life, your physical health, and your mental well-being, and that there are 7 types of communication interactions that people savor. And I'm going to give you just the highlight on what those types are, but I want you to really think about, are there moments in your life where you knew, maybe it's 8th grade, on the telephone, the actual phone, like, our colleagues are saying, Natalie's saying, let's call people, where you spent time talking to somebody and really connecting, and you did not even know that time was passing by. In those moments, you are fully engaged in that, present in that communication moment. And those are moments we can savor at that time. We can anticipate savoring them in the future, and we can recall them when we are experiencing loneliness. We can connect through savoring past communication experiences and pulling those loved ones close to us, even if they're not present in that moment. The types of communication that we savor are often in relationships. One is aesthetic communication. These are those delightful moments. I think of my son who couldn't say the Millennium Falcon, and he called it the Lemony Falcon. That's a moment I love to savor. I love the way kids speak. I love the way that we express our language in different dialect and discourses. Communication presence, being really close with somebody in a communication encounter where it seems like they are saying your next words for you, and there's that tight sense of connectivity. Nonverbal communication, like Kory Floyd might talk about, hugging, holding hands, being close to one another, gently speaking to somebody when you're offering bad news. Recognition and acknowledgement as a type of moments that we savor, that feeling of pride, and somebody has recognized that in us, or even more, we find our participants say they really savored a moment that they celebrated somebody else's achievement. Relational communication, those are those micro moments of the I love yous that we often remember. We recall those as a memorable moment, but we recall them and we have an experience of positive affect and love that generates within us at that moment of time. Both ordinary and extraordinary communication moments, and moments that we call implicitly shared communication, where if we were to say something in that moment out loud, we might burst the bubble of the awesome thing that is happening around us. And so we have a shared sense of, we aren't going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about this, because if we do, we might ruin the moment, but we know intuitively that we're connected. So that's me on communication savoring. It's very similar to peak communication experiences. Those are ones that you might savor. Micro moments of hope and health and friendship. Thank you all so much, and I look forward to a conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maggie. Could we get Hakan and Michelle and Narissa spotlighted so that we can have them in our little group? That'd be great. And because we do have just a little bit of time for questions before Julien pulls the plug on us here. Yeah.
I'll try not to, but I did want to, I was thinking about the two panels.
A couple of minutes. All right, yeah. Wow. Now this is powerhouse.
I'm not gonna pull it, Tom, but I did want to add a comment here. I mean, there's such themes between Andy and Nally and Bailey and Maggie, which is this idea of, what are the small things that we can do? So that's the transition I felt from moving from the loneliness discussion to now, which is what are some things at the individual level that I can do to feel a little bit more connected? And some of that, what I'm learning today from Kory's talk, is how important the way I talk to myself is. And, a lot of my research has been trying to identify, Natalie, you said these speech acts, right? So really that's what I've been trying to focus on, is are there things I can do communicatively that would get me there? And so I'm wondering how people are reacting to this, because now I feel like, I can savor this moment a little bit, or Bailey was talking about disclosing. So maybe if I have the courage to share how I'm feeling with somebody, well, that hopefully they're reciprocated and I'll have a connection with them. Andy is talking about all these small little moments. So now I'm curious about the loneliness scholars and what they're thinking about all of this. Anyway, sorry, that's what's on my mind, Tom.
That's a good question to tee it up, right? The small moments, right? Paying attention, because it relates to my big question is, now that we're all doing this via this medium in this context, digitally post-pandemic, right? How do we do these small things, digitally? Is it an emoji? Do we get the same kind of thing? I know, Narissa, you've been working with social media. You want to give us any insights there? Is an emoji going to do it for us to connect us and make us feel the love?
Yeah, emojis can help. We know that at least 10 minutes a day on social media sometimes will help people, but we know at the same time that, if we reduce the amount of 10 minutes a day on social media, we found a significant result in terms of people's satisfaction. So emoji can help for sure, but I'll let the other panelists chime in as well.
Right. Yeah. How do you guys keep from being lonely while we're together, but we are alone? Right. I mean, we're all in our spaces, right? The Sherry Turkle thing, alone together, right? Are we managing that? Is that part of what we're struggling with as a society? At work, I mean, Hakan, we're working remotely, aren't we? A lot more working remotely. Are we going to see more loneliness issues on the horizon, do you think?
Well, actually, we are seeing them already. I've been recently approached by the board of directors of San Mateo County, which is the sister city to Silicon Valley. So while the AI technology is changing the world, the sister city is going through tough times of loneliness. So they invited me as a subject matter expert to their meeting. And then at the end of that board meeting, they, with a very strong resolution, also citing Surgeon General McMurtry's call for action for loneliness epidemic. They've declared loneliness as a social health crisis in San Mateo County. And then a week later, in Daly City, the city declared it as a social health crisis. Mm-hmm. So what we are seeing is a very strong phenomena right now coming in waves. So what did not happen during the pandemic is happening now. And I think pandemic and post-pandemic is taking its toll on people, because I think a couple of things happened. First, I think we really drew a lot on our emotional resources during the pandemic, which kind of hyped us, right? And then right after, you are done with your exams, with your teaching, with a, exciting task, you kind of, get into a mode where now you'll become vulnerable. And I think people have gotten to that phase of vulnerability right now because we've been, so uptight for so long that we are seeking attention. But more importantly, I think we might have start getting really lazy in our social skills.
Okay.
Like getting together with friends, having a decent dinner meeting, people without people canceling reservations.
Yeah,
being late or violating communication norms. So instead of savoring, you are having quite a weird time with your old friends. So I think I'm observing quite a lot also in the workplace. The social skills might be at a point where we need to exercise on our social skills again, because in the pandemic, it was a weird period and it was too long that like the frog in the pond metaphor, I think kind of was in place, that gradually we started getting used to violating social norms. And now we are kind of building those weird norms that I think we should correct to become, more normal people engaged in normal interactions.
Right, absolutely. I love seeing you guys here, but I think it'd be way better to have you out on my deck over here and making some pizzas, and we could interact, and I think that would be more fun, right? And my concern is that these build up to a level that Michelle has to deal with suicide, right? Michelle, as you're confronting these sorts of things.
So the question is what? I'm sorry.
Now when we're in these particular times and increasing in our loneliness, right? Do you think that it's going to contribute to more
Absolutely
not to be discussions?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's clear that loneliness leads to suicidal ideation, and there's been only an increase. Now, again, it's very much the increases are younger people and older people, but I think, especially with younger people in that social isolation, we're seeing direct relationships to suicidal ideation and suicide attempts.
Okay. So we do have to be concerned about this, that, as universities, we see it here at Old Dominion, people not wanting to come back to campus. They get real comfortable being at home and all that, and not seeing the advantage of just being with other human beings. I think we need to think about that. I see it in especially around here, we've got a lot of churches closing. Folks not wanting to do not only organized religion, but not anything organized in general. And some of the work that I've done with the Modern Elder Academy and Chip Connolly, the older life folks, they really want that connection, and they've got to work extra hard to get it. So when we think about this across the lifespan, it's going to be different struggles for different people. And when I little worried when I see the kids being socialized into this way of thinking, that we're not sure where it's all going to go, right? The teenagers and the things that we're, learning about social interaction, how that's going to go, those small moments that Andy was talking about, right? And that, what's your word, Andy, the social biome that you've been working with?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I think one of the things it's really struck me is, the longer you're in your career, is just how important it is to think not only small, but then immediately you have to think about structure, right? And I think it's one of the blind spots of interpersonal communication, and it's not necessarily our fault, but it's really hard to study both structure and micro moments at the same time, right? But we know that loneliness is partly a structural problem, right? And when you have systems that don't provide opportunities, as Hakan said, right, whether it's an organizational structure or a university structure, or much larger historical structures or cultural structures that either privilege or don't, right, certain forms of connection. So while the individual has a lot of agency in a sense to reach out and connect, but there's limits to that, right? And I think that's always the important counterweight to this type of discussion, is like, wow, we have this power to connect with people, to give our time, to savor, right? But we're always pushing against headwinds, of disconnection. And those are the realities of social life. And so anyway, that metaphor we have of the social biome is that idea that it's both of our making, but furnished to us, just like, say, our gut health. It is the choices we make with diet, but also the environments we just happen to be born into. And I think that has a lot of relevance to how we can think about communication and connection.
It does.
Thank you so much, Andy. I'm going to step in here because we're going to need to close the session.
Thank you.
I know I'm the joy killer here, but first, I don't know if you're out there, there's 150 of us. Let's say a big thank you to our presenters. I learned so much in the last hour about loneliness and connection. So grateful for all of you. We are going to take a short 5-minute break. Maggie is going to put a timer. We're going to have some music playing. It's mostly so you can take a deep breath. And then when we come back, we're going to focus on positive communication pedagogy that will promote human connection. We have Leslie Langbert from University of Arizona Center for Compassion Studies. And then you'll learn a little bit about how to practice positive communication in the classroom to build community. So stay with us. Once we're done with pedagogy, we'll move to focus on practice, where we have outstanding consultants and trainers and executive coaches who are going to lead some fascinating discussion. So we'll see you in a couple minutes. hang in there, and look forward to connecting with you when we come back.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Let's see, we need to highlight Leslie, right?
Yes, I think we're ready to go. Welcome back, everybody, to the 2024 Positive Communication Conference. We just had a wonderful session on exploring the research topic of loneliness in connection with researchers from all across the US. We're now going to move to exploring positive communication pedagogy and use that positive communication to promote human connection. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Maggie, who's going to lead this whole section. So welcome back, everybody. Can't wait to see what we do in the next hour.
Hi, everybody. I hope you had a nice break and maybe took a moment to send a message to somebody that you care about. I'm going to take this moment and give a message to a person that I care deeply about, who is Leslie Langbert, who's here on the screen with me. Hi, Leslie. We get to enjoy so many of these wonderful moments together. Let me introduce you to Leslie. She's going to give us a moment that I think is really special, and then talk about some work that she does here at the University of Arizona, in part through the Center for Compassion Studies. Leslie earned a Master of Social Work degree from Florida State University and is a licensed clinical social worker. She earned a Senior Instructor designation from for Cognitively Based Compassion Training, CBCT. But that's not all. She also instructs yoga, teaches courses in mindfulness. I once did a contemplative walk with her in the forest in complete silence, and it's amazing how much you create human connectivity and connectivity between people and place through contemplative walk and contemplative practices. She's also co-founder of the first of its kind in the Southwest Center for Compassion Studies here at the University of Arizona. And I'd like to tell you also that Leslie is an acrobat, but not an acrobat. An acrobat soars through the sky, balances, tumbles, and floats with grace and agility. The audience sees the movement, the grace, the coordination. The audience feels the connection to the acrobat, the tension that's there, the connection to others in the audience as we have this communal experience, and connection to humanity. What the audience does not see is a radical devotion to a practice and to a generosity that is not only for the self, but for others. Because of this practice, the practice of compassion, the practice of connection, this beauty, Leslie's beauty, is necessary for human thriving. Leslie's compassion practice attracts and amazes audience in a way that feels effortless, full of grace and graciousness, but it is also intentional and cultivated, something that always seems to be prepared just for you, or in my case, just for me. And so with that in mind, Leslie has prepared a mindfulness moment for us. And this is going to kick off our next phase of the conference. Leslie, I'm going to turn it over to you to help us bring in this shared moment of connectivity through mindfulness.
Thank you, Maggie, so much, and for your incredible generosity and love. Love you. And I'm so grateful to be here with all of you this morning. Or this afternoon, wherever you may be. So I'd like to invite us to take a few moments for a little bit of grounding and centering. This is a practice that I introduce in my in-person class here at the University of Arizona before we start every class. So I will invite you to, even if you've been in your space all day, take a moment just to notice what's around you, turning your body to one side, noticing what's close to you, what's further away, taking this opportunity perhaps to bring a little movement into your body, releasing any tension that may have accumulated being at your computer, and gently turning your body over to the other side, noticing what's on that side of you. So you're taking in doorways, windows, colors, textures. Notice what's behind you in your space. And then take a moment here to find a comfortable, relaxed posture that allows for evenness in your body. If you're seated in a chair, perhaps bringing both of your feet flat to the floor, feeling the evenness in your sitting bones. Perhaps feeling the support of your chair against your back. It may feel comfortable for you to allow your eyes to gently close or just soften your gaze, making the shift from noticing everything all around you to noticing your own inner landscape. Take a moment to connect with your body, any sensations, any feelings that might be present. Seeing if you can let go of any judgment around anything that you find. You may notice a feeling of alertness, or there may be a bit of sluggishness or fatigue. Whatever's there, just allowing that to be. Pausing to notice areas in your body that may feel at ease, spacious, relaxed. And noticing the qualities of that feeling. Perhaps softness, perhaps lightness. And as you continue to scan your body, noticing any areas that may feel tight or that are holding tension in some way. And noting those sensations. If it feels comfortable for you, bringing small movements perhaps into those areas. Inviting a sense of greater ease and relaxation. Noticing your jaw, allowing it to be soft. Allowing the shoulders to drop down away from the ears. Collarbones gently spread, feeling the heart lifting up. It may feel good to you to take a couple deep breaths, breathing in deeply into the nostrils, feeling your belly expand as though you're inflating a balloon. Exhaling through the mouth, imagining that you can release out with the breath any worries or tensions, any to-dos that might be on your mind. As you inhale, visualizing sunshine as well as oxygen permeating all of your cells, bringing vitality and alertness into your body. And as you exhale, a deep release. As you feel ready, allowing your breath to return to its natural rhythm, its natural pace, effortless. Dropping awareness further now into your body, becoming aware of the places where your body and the earth connect. Aware of the support underneath you, giving the fullness of your weight over to your chair. Aware of this unwavering stability and support that's with you always. Perhaps visualizing roots growing from your body down deep into the earth, spreading wide, anchoring you. And imagining now your roots intertwining with the roots of others. A reminder of our deep interconnectedness and interdependence with each other and all beings. And a reminder that we are part of the earth and not separate from it. With a gentle inhale, imagining that you're drawing that life-sustaining, nourishing energy from the earth up into your roots, up into your body. Feeling your spine gently lengthen. Taking another full deep inhale, exhaling, letting go. Aware of the fullness of your body. Aware of all of the other friends and scholars with you in this moment. And as we close our practice, perhaps setting an intention to carry any benefits of our practice into our daily interactions and our relationships with others. Thank you. As you gently return back, just take a moment just to notice how you feel, if there's any shift and before you started your practice to now. Friends, I have been asked to share with you a little bit about the Mindful Semester, which is an online course that I created here at the University of Arizona about 5 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long already. So I have a few highlights to share. The Mindful Semester is an undergraduate course that is an elective for every student at the U of A. We have some seats that are available for our UA Online campus as well, but it's mostly for our bricks and mortar students. And the way that it is structured, it unfolds in 3 one-credit courses. So they're mini courses. Each of them are 5 weeks long. There are no prerequisites for the courses. They can be taken in any order. And the 3 mini courses are Foundations of Mindfulness, Mindfulness-Based Study Tools, and Mindfulness-Based Movement. Part of why I created this course is obviously as a meditation facilitator and someone who's really keenly interested in wanting to expand compassion. I thought that it would be a really powerful opportunity to introduce students to mindfulness practices that they can begin to work with as college students to support them not only in their studies, but really in their development at this really critical stage in their life, to help them work with their emotions, to work with their thoughts in skillful ways. The way that this course has been developed is asynchronous. So, but it's also highly interactive. And there are a few kind of key pieces that that we offer in this course. I want to give you kind of a quick overview of the course objectives. So there are 4. What we are hoping students can do in each of these courses is have a greater sense of what mindfulness practice is and what it's not. And be able to cultivate through their direct real life practices each week, the ability to notice how mindfulness as a state of being is not only really helpful for us to cope with life's natural ups and downs, but a way for us to really be able to be more present in our lives for the things that are joyful and the things that are pleasant. Students also are invited to identify the research-based effects and benefits of mindfulness practices. So there's been a lot of research that's emerged around the benefits of cultivating mindfulness in different ways. Many of you I know are involved in that research. What they're learning about are really specifically what's emerging around how mindfulness practices in different ways support the experience of being a college student. So it's sort of bringing them into the what's in it for them in very real ways. And then being able to apply practices so that they can learn how to be more accepting of their thoughts, their emotions, cultivating ways to enhance positive emotions, and also learning how to work with emotions that are sometimes difficult. We have a whole module that's on mindfulness and emotions, and I'm so appreciative and so grateful that Maggie Pitts was actually really involved in developing that module with us. I know that she shared a lot about her savoring research with you earlier, and that's embedded in that module, Maggie and I actually went on location on campus outside and demonstrated a savoring walk together. And Maggie gave a really wonderful teaching in that part of the module there. In the mindful semester, to kind of frame a little bit about how are students learning and what does this look like? Because the course is 1 credit, it's really really heavy on direct practice, but then also giving a framing for students to have a sense of, this is what we're going to be exploring this week. Here are some of the research benefits, and here's some of the common either challenges or benefits that we know about these practices. So rather than coming at it with kind of a boring having me give the lecture all the time or look like I'm like delivering the 6 o'clock news, I really wanted to capitalize on this moment where podcasts have become extremely popular. And so there's a short podcast style framing talk every week. And that's usually about 8 minutes in length. It's kind of NPR style with little musical interludes and trying to like keep students entertained and engaged there. And then we built in videos. And again, because I didn't want this to, there's so many experts and so many incredible people on our campus that that have scholarship in all of these different mindfulness practices. We brought in faculty across campus and also students who have certification and training in different skills so that students both could see faculty across different disciplines and hopefully be excited and say, oh my gosh, I want to take this person's class because what they're studying sounds great. And also to see themselves represented, to see other students that can lead them in practices that they have skills and abilities with. So for example, we have a student that took the course and then became certified as a Qigong instructor. And then we brought him back to do a demonstration and lead a practice for the Qigong module in the mindfulness-based movement course. In terms of creating positive communication and how do we create connections for students, there's a couple different ways there. So students are invited to try out practices each week for themselves. So there's recorded guided practices that they're encouraged to download and take away and continue to use long after the course ends. They are then invited to leave a reflection about their practice. What did they notice? What came up for them? What did they feel in their body? What did they notice in terms of any differences before and after? What challenges came up for them? And what we have found in that, so that has been when students leave their reflections, only the instructor sees that. So that's an opportunity for them to really, it's an invitation to be vulnerable. And we found that students respond really positively to that. They share about their experiences with mental health. One of the things that's so beautiful about this generation is they're so out there, so like they're resilient and they are really seeking out therapy. And they're so proud of sharing, like, you know what, I learned this with my therapist, and this is great that I'm doing this in a class, and now I'm building on it. That's been a wonderful piece to see. And then connecting them with each other. Each of these courses are designed to have a small cohort between 25 and 30 students so that we can provide as much support and individual feedback as possible. We offer a reflection discussion prompt every week, and we use the tool of VoiceThread. So those of you that are teaching online classes at the U of A are familiar with that. Students can either record a short video, they can record audio, or they can create a text-based response. They respond to the prompt, and then they respond to each other. And what we see is that it's really wonderful the way students will support each other with ideas. You know, hey, I noticed this, and this was supportive for me. If students notice a challenge, that level of compassion and support that comes through is just always just super, super encouraging and uplifting to see. And then they have a knowledge check every week. So it's just 10 questions that reinforce what they've learned. So I'm going to pause here. I see there's some activity in the chat. I don't know if there are questions.
I think there's a lot of praise, yeah, in the chat, and a lot of thank yous, a lot of gratitude. Leslie, thank you so much. We have just a couple minutes before we transition into our next team of speakers, but I wondered if you might. Well, we'll take this question maybe that's in here. There's a great question about how, would you talk a little bit about some of your outreach beyond the U of A community? In particular, your work with our Native and Indigenous groups here in the surrounding community and children. And that's sort of one of the questions that just popped up in the chat. Would you talk a little bit about expanding your pedagogical outreach?
Sure. Yeah. In the Center for Compassion Studies, one of the big pieces that we do is to share compassion practices with those persons in the community that are really interested in learning to cultivate these skills. And so sharing cognitively based compassion training, which is an 8-week program that includes meditation components and then a pedagogy to help us cultivate the skills to expand compassion beyond those that we already hold dear and have compassion naturally for. I had the honor of being able to bring cognitively based compassion training to children at the Pasquayaki tribe about, oh gosh, it's been about 10 years. 10 years ago. And it's been a really, really, really wonderful experience, to take these teachings and then shift them developmentally to be appropriate for kids. At that time, they were 9 and 10 years old. So we just bring in like different activities, games, and different ways that that kids can connect with the teachings. And it's really, really wonderful to share this with kids because they pick up on the pedagogy really in a lot of ways faster than many adults do. I think they're not as covered over, with life experience, I guess. And I've shared this practice with adolescents that are in foster care group homes as well, and found that that's been also a really positive experience for those young people to find that they're able to navigate their experiences and cultivate a greater sense of self-compassion. And I've worked with colleagues on campus to share this practice with trans youth as well, which has been really, really exciting. I saw there's a question around if compassion training has been adapted or offered for veterans. And so I'll say that in my undergraduate courses, I frequently have veterans that take my course, Self-Care in the Helping Professions, which is really around expanding compassion toward others. And for those that are maybe interested in wanting to follow up on this, I have a colleague that works at the VA in San Diego who actually took cognitively based compassion training and created a veteran-specific CBCT program to help support veterans who are experiencing post-traumatic stress.
Leslie, thank you so much. I think as we're making the transition from the kind of loneliness component to our connection component, our work in outreach through mindfulness and through compassion is really important. And in particular, as we wrap our compassion around groups that especially need that sense of connection. In my work on savoring, I do work with military families as well, as savoring as a resilience strategy to help with the re-entry back from deployment. And I do that work with colleagues here on the call, Gary Beck and some of my graduate students. But these different pockets, and also looking at end-of-life communication with positive communication and using compassion as people are transitioning toward toward death and dying. And these are all groups that we tend to shy away from, and yet making that connection actually helps us all feel a little bit closer to humanity. I really value and appreciate your work. I think you and I had a quick text message this morning that you might even have slides to share, but we didn't open that screen up for you soon enough, but I'll be happy to share them with the group. I can even put them in the chat. But I'm going to transition us now to Julien, Mirivel, and Amy Young, and they're going to talk to us about strategies and tips for creating community in and out of the classroom, very much connected to the work that Leslie is also doing, creating communities of connection in college campuses and beyond. Dr. Amy Young is Faculty Director of Positive Organization Consortium and the Center for Positive Organizations at the University of Michigan. Her very special talent is inspiring and helping to build foundations for human-centered positive work environments. So how can we create positivity and connectivity in work environments, but also in academic environments? And of course, you all know Dr. Julien Mirivel, Professor of Applied Communication at University of Arkansas at Little Rock, always making a positive difference and impact both in the US as well as abroad through some really profound international work across the globe. So welcome to Julien and to Amy, and please share with us your strategies for cultivating a classroom where people connect.
Thank you so much, Maggie. We're going to try to make this very, very practical for you. I am going to share, I prefer Keynote, so this is going to be a lot easier for me. A bit of an introduction here. I shared with you a document in the chat. You're welcome to refer to it. It should be in there. It's a PDF file, and we're going to make reference to it. But really where I want to start is this idea that we know, and I think understand, that the relationship that we create with students is critical, not just for connecting with students, but for students learning. And whether I look to philosophy or great thinkers or even empirical research, I tend to see that theme echoed in people's words. So here's some examples. Teaching is relationship, right? Eric Fromm wrote this. He says, we're losing the teaching that is the most important for human development, the teaching that can only be given by the mere presence of a mature and loving person. And I know that being an undergraduate student and having met mentors who became that mature and loving individual has meant the world to me and has impacted my life for the better as a result. I think of Martin Buber and his words, the real teacher is not the one who pours information into the head of the student as through a funnel. It is the one who promotes genuine contact and mutual trust. But when we look at empirical research, we now have data to support these kinds of ideas. Jay Tevin, for example, in one research article wrote, in order to maximize learning, it is essential that teachers develop a good relationships with their students, as the rapport established between teachers and students determines student interest and performance. It has a direct impact on students' learning. My colleague here in the School of Public Affairs at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock, has done some research on this in online education. Her name is Rebecca Glazer. She's got this really nice model. I'm not going to go over it, obviously, but you can see the idea, right? The way we connect with students in the classroom in small and big ways matters. It has consequences for the student in terms of retaining our students, in terms of serving students who are at risk, in terms of improving their academic performance, in terms of engagement. But that also leads to some tangible outcomes at the university level, and of course, for that student's long term. So if you're in this session, you're probably thinking, how do I create community? How can I create connections with students? And so Amy and I are going to try to answer this. We've been introduced. So I'm Julien, this is Amy. And together we're going to try to show you how you can use positive communication in kind of your own approach to teaching in a way that makes a difference. So we'll do two things. One, I'm going to share with you a model of positive communication that I've developed, and then we're going to apply it in the context of teaching and learning together. So let me give you a quick overview of this model. In 2010, I wrote a book called The Art of Positive Communication Theory and Practice. And one of the most beautiful things that happened in writing the book is a model of positive communication emerged as a result of engaging in that writing. And the model was really designed to help people communicate more positively across contexts. And it was designed to inform my own thinking, but really help people where do I start if I want to communicate a little bit better in my personal and professional life? So what you see here in this diagram is that we've got 6 key behaviors of positive communication, and those 6 behaviors are connected to principles. The first behavior is greeting. I believe that when we greet, we have the ability to create human connection. We'll explore that, what that means for the classroom in just a second. I believe that when we ask open-ended questions in particular, that we have the ability to put ourselves in a position of discovery and also in a stance of humility, actually. The third behavior is complimenting. I believe that when we compliment, we have the ability to affect how other people see themselves, both who they are in the moment, but more importantly, who they become. The fourth behavior is disclosing. And really, I believe that when we disclose, we have the ability to deepen our relationships with others. My friend Alex Line calls disclosure the magic wand of communication. That's because when you say a little something, people tend to reciprocate and suddenly you feel connected. The fifth behavior and its principle is that when we encourage, we have the ability to use communication as a gift and to give people the support they need to succeed, overcome challenges, or even overcome a crisis. Finally, the last behavior is about the power of listening. I believe that when we listen, we can transcend the perceived differences between us and other people. So I've been writing about this model for a while. At the end, I think that as a teacher, as a faculty member, I can use this model to begin to create community, me and the students, but more importantly, students together, creating a community that's going to help them learn a little bit more. And that's when you put yourself in a position of inspiring people and influencing others. So what Amy and I are going to do is we're going to take this model, I put the PDF in the chat, and we're just going to give you some concrete things you can do right now that would have an impact. So Amy, I'm going to let you take it from there and I'll share the PDF.
Yeah, thanks, Julien. When the pandemic hit, I felt like I really needed to double down and help students with their mental health and loneliness because they were in their room, Zooming in. And I was so glad I had your model and I had a little bit of time under my belt teaching it. So with greeting, the first one that we used was really about helping students connect. And so one of the practices that we would do might be having students opening the course and introducing ourselves and modeling what it means to give a nice greeting. Also, having students greet to others in the class. And this opportunity I saw as having them provide a little bit of information about themselves so that they could initiate a conversation after class. That's a way that they could build upon this. And then, the third option or way of going about it is really practicing greeting in different languages to build these cultural connections and communication. Now, Julien, how about you talk about number 2 with the asking?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So when we are really implementing this model, I'll just give you an idea because it's really about the power of questions, and there are lots of literature that shows that the way teachers ask questions in the classroom matters for student learning. But one activity that I have found, you can read the rest, but one activity I have found really helpful is for my online students in particular. I have an exercise where they have to go interview each other via Zoom. So what they do is I pair them up in the class. They're in a fully online class. I give them a task to accomplish during that interaction. And then all they have to do is Zoom together. They schedule the Zoom. They connect over a few prompts or questions. They record the Zoom, and then they bring it back. And I can tell you, all they have to do is share the Zoom link, and I award some points. But every semester, it's their favorite activity to be able to connect with somebody else in the classroom when most of the time in online classes in particular, we don't get to. But when we use questions, we get to put ourselves in a position of discovery. What's the third one, Amy?
Third one is complimenting. And, complimenting, students will often say, well, I don't want to give a false compliment. And it's not about that. It's about noticing strengths and calling it out because other people don't know their own strengths. And we go through the practice of having them do that with each other when they spot it. And it's amazing the impact it has. But even practices such as giving meaningful compliments to students and teaching them the secret of a really good compliment. Really good compliment, you're identifying the strength, you're giving a specific example, and then you're talking about the impact. And that is a powerful way of demonstrating a compliment. Also being able to set high expectations along with the strengths. So it's not as though you're just, always giving positive praise, but you're positively praising, identifying the strengths that actually help students grow and continue with that growth process. And also giving the whole class explicit positive feedback. That really helps them understand that collectively they're amazing. With that, let's talk about disclosure, Julien.
So disclosure is really any time that you reveal who you are in the course of interaction by sharing information about yourself. And those can take place obviously via stories, examples, but also being willing to disclose some personal aspect of your life. So, as a teacher, we have lots of opportunities in the classroom to do this. Sometimes it just involves, hey, here's what I'm up to in the weekend. In the fall, I had the chance of traveling to Saudi Arabia. So my 1,300 students could not wait to hear what that experience was like. And it was a beautiful way of kind of sharing some things that were happening in my life and the challenges that I faced along the way, and then sorting them out in the classroom with students. Today, I'm going to really choose the second one, which is really about a form of disclosure that I think really impacts performance is being very clear about your expectations as a teacher. Expectations for assignments, expectations for prompts, expectations for discussion boards. And I noticed that a small tweak made a huge difference for me. I was always frustrated that my A students always did so well on online prompts, for example, because they knew what to do. They're like, here's a concept, here are my thoughts, here's a reference to the book. But then my students who were not doing so well, sometimes it was like, well, I really love this topic. And that was it. There was not much depth to this. I was like, well, what's happening? Well, I changed the prompt and I said, in at least 250 words, do this. And I became more precise about what I was asking. And what I noticed is that when I'm more precise, my students are also more precise. There's a relationship between their performance and what I ask them to do and how I ask them to do it. Lots of other ways to do it, but for today, that's all we'll focus on. Tell us about number 5, Amy.
Okay, encouraging. Now, I realize that teachers have a special role in encouraging students because, a lot of students think that if they don't get it perfectly right, they failed. Okay. But actually, they have gotten that much closer to success. They just haven't seen it. And so spending time trying to notice those small little improvements and calling them out to the students really helps them begin to see it. So giving instrumental, emotional, and esteem support is a great way to do it. Also leaving encouraging notes on students' work. So all too often we are trained to just focus on what's wrong, right? When we do that, we're not really encouraging them to do what's right. And so focusing on what they're done really well is going to encourage them to do it more, and they're going to feel the praise. And then lastly, flipping the classroom. So if you are actually giving the instruction outside of the classroom, in the classroom, you're there when they are coming up against problems, and you can give them that emotional support that keeps them going, that keeps their energy and enthusiasm going forward. How about listening, Julien?
So the last principle is about the impact of listening. So as a teacher, you can learn to not only just listen to your students, but create a context where listening is taking place. We give lots of examples on the handout here that we're sharing with you. The one that I'm going to emphasize very quickly is using what we call liberating structures. If you go, there's actually a website called Liberating Structures, www.liberatingstructures.com. There's approximately 50 different strategies that you can use to liberate your groups. But my favorite is called the 1, 2, 4 all. I use this all the time in the classroom to create community. And you start always with reflection. So you always ask people to reflect before that. And we're actually going to do this in our after party. So stay with us. Then after having reflection, number 1, you move to conversation with another person. So you move from being by yourself reflecting to interpersonal communication. Then you move to 4. So you pair people up in groups of 4 and they discuss together and make decisions. Then you come back to the all. That process really slows down communication. It gives everybody a chance to be participative, to be vocal, to express their ideas, and then ultimately really creates a listening environment for all. So let's conclude, Amy. These are some tips and strategies you can use in the classroom today.
Sounds good. So yeah, with this, what I found is that, we really have most instructors and teachers have great intentions, but the tools that we learned here really are the small little tweaks that make the difference. And both Julien and I love this quote from Parker Palmer, which really speaks to how we see our role as teachers. So good teachers possess a capacity for connectedness. They're able to weave a complex web of connections among themselves, their subject, and their students, so that students can learn to weave a world for themselves. With that, Julien, let's turn it over and have a little practice.
Thank you so much. So we've made this conference as interactive as we could, but not enough. And so now we're going to take a bit of a turn and give ourselves a chance and you a chance to really practice some of what we've been talking about, have a chance to connect with people. So what we're going to do for the time that we have here is have a breakout room activity. So stay with us. I know the shy people are going, okay, I'm done now, but stay with us and try to engage. And it's really simple. We're just going to put you in rooms of about 4 or 5 people. It's going to take us a second to do the breakout room. And we're just going to ask you to get into that room, introduce each other very quickly. If you can turn on your video, that would be great. And your audio, that would be great. And then take for a moment, try to answer this prompt. And the prompt is simple. Tell the story of the last time that you had a conversation with someone that brought you happiness. So we're going to put that in the chat, and then we're going to create these breakout rooms. And there you go, before we move on to the part. Here it is. Is it working? Yeah, there it is. And then let's create these breakout rooms really quickly. So let's see. Let's see, 25, I think we're going to do. Okay, so we've got 25 breakout rooms approximately. Feel free to join in, and then we'll bring you back so that you have a chance to connect. We're going to give you about 5 minutes to do that. Have fun.
Let us know if you have any trouble locating your breakout room. We might be able to help out from our end. If you're on an iPhone and you can't access your breakout room, some of us will hang out in this big living room and can engage you here. But you see lots of people are connecting.
Okay, Marceline, let me see. I don't know, Marcia, I don't know if I can put you directly into the room. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can. No. Okay, I'm going to go join the, somebody needs help. So I'm going to.
How did he know someone needs help? He just sensed it.
Yes, he had his feelers out. I think there's a it's hard on the cell phones to connect over, so I think he's trying to bring connect those rooms or those individuals together on the chat. I'm trying to see who's in there. Oh, Julien is in a room by himself now. It is sort of fun. Now he's back.
If somebody else notices, so there was one person who was not together. If you are in the big room right now and you're still with us, but you're, maybe you're doing something else, that's not a problem at all. But we do need to go through and see if anybody is alone in the chat rooms.
Oh, is that what you, that's how you identified someone?
Yeah, I joined one of the rooms and she was by herself, so I moved her.
You can't have that on a conference about loneliness.
Exactly. Let me see. So in most rooms right now that I'm seeing, so Eddie, you should have been invited to your room, Eddie, if you click on the breakout room button. And you are in room 23, Eddie, actually, if you want to join now. And I don't think I can make you go there. So you're going to need to choose how to go there. There's already a few people in there. And then there's Maggie. Okay. And there's Bailey and Linda. So there's a few people. I think we're good on time.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm going to broadcast out our question again, just in case anybody didn't take it with them when they went into the Zoom room.
Thank you.
Julien, we've had a new participant join us, so we'll get them into a room to connect. We're doing a moment to connect audience with one another.
And Eddie, and so I saw your chat text. No worries. If you're having problems with the connection, don't worry. We just want to give people a chance to connect a little bit, since this is a conference to move us from loneliness to connection. And you're welcome to try to connect with us right now if you want to. But no pressure or worries.
Oh, and I'm just moving a few people around who might be in a room, as people have maybe had to leave for different reasons. Just moving a few people around to rooms with people.
Great. And what should we do? Okay, Emily was in a breakout room.
It's booting
Oh,
me out.
sorry, Emily. Yeah, it looks like you're booting out. So I'm not sure why. It could be your connection. But you're welcome to turn your video on and I will connect with you.
We're good at connecting. We can bridge the connection gap.
This group is amazing. Yeah, thanks. No, we're glad you're here, Emily. So no worries. I don't want you to feel any pressure either way, but we are here to connect anytime.
I can't answer the question, Julien, tell the story of the last time you had a conversation with someone that brought you happiness, because every time we meet with the Positive Communication Network, I can tell you my Friday, my Saturday, my Sunday, this is going to give me joy and delight all the way through the next week. When I communicate with others who are equally enthusiastic about positive communication, it is very attractive. It's very energizing. Everything else dissipates. I'm just so glad to be here with everybody today.
Yeah. Well, now expanding our group to this larger group, it just is really emotional contagion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of I feel so lucky because I feel like I have so many of these little moments, so many of these conversations that bring me that kind of joy, whether it's with my wife, my kids, my children, my students.
Well,
I
maybe
had a
you're a
student
master
email me the
positive
other day.
communicator.
Huh?
Maybe you're a master at this. You're a master. You bring it to every aspect of your life.
I don't know. I mean, I try to practice it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I do feel lucky. I had a very good friend just like earlier this week. We have lunch every 2 weeks. And he just, disclosed some really personal things about what was going on in his life. And so to kind of be there with him and to be a friend, we've been friends now for 18 years since I've been in Arkansas. Yeah. So to have him kind of disclose and be connected, we're actually more connected than ever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah. And so anyway, having that brought me a lot of happiness for sure.
Yep. No matter where you are, you can use these practices and create a little bit of happiness.
Yeah.
What do you think? Should we bring everybody back? It's 1:31. We have a couple minutes if we want them to interact. Some of our folks left us. I saw Tom having a good time. I see some of my students here. I see Shelby is here. And obviously we know Scott. I wonder now. Now I want to know. Get to know Emily. I wonder what you do, Emily. What do you do, Emily?
I especially like that there's another Maggie on our
Yeah.
call. There's
Yeah,
not that many
that's always
Maggies out there. That made me feel a connection just through the name.
Ah, you work with youth with developmental disabilities.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for your work, Emily. It's very important work.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. So I'm going to give it one more minute, and then we're going to be able to bring everybody back. See, Julia's joined us. Okay, Emily. Oh, that's wonderful, Emily. Thanks for sharing so much what you're doing. Yeah, really meaningful work. All right. Hey, Julie, thanks for joining us. Oh, thanks, Emily. We appreciate the positive feedback. We want to make this conference as meaningful as we can. Looks like people are coming back, so I'm gonna close the rooms and maybe begin to transition us here in a couple minutes, because they'll take 60 seconds to get everybody back.
I could play music. I feel confident in my new abilities. Let me see if I can play music for that moment. Good one.
Yeah, there we go.
It's a little slow, a little nappy. Maybe I'll do this. We don't want people to fall asleep.
I muted you by accident. Maggie, sorry.
I don't believe you, Julian.
Let's keep it positive, people.
Love that.
That was fun.
Yes, it was.
I love to see so many people not coming back and connecting. So we're glad that you are with us, and we're glad. Look at all these videos. It's so nice to see happy faces here and smiling. I don't know if one of my team, I'm going to take a little snapshot here of all of us, but nice to see some everybody kind of having a chance to interact, and we're glad you're with us.
Hey,
So we're going to move.
Can I do
go
a
ahead, Maggie.
shout out? I see a lot of people who joined us 1 year ago today. I see B Strickland in particular. I remember having a great interaction with you last year, B, and just a lot of friends that we've made just through the Positive Comm Network. And so for those of you who've been with us from last year to this year, just thank you so much. And now that we see you guys on camera, it truly is a delight. So thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. So we're going to actually focus on the fourth part of our conference here. So we started the day by welcoming you. Then we moved to a keynote presentation by Dr. Kory Floyd, which really was excellent. We then explored the topic of loneliness and connection with researchers across the US. And so then we focused on teaching, but now we're going to take a turn and really learn from our practitioners. So Maggie is going to be leading that session, but we really want to make this as practical as we can. And so they're going to lead some micro trainings for us, followed by breakout room discussions. So if you like this moment of connection, you're going to like what's coming. Maggie, it's all yours.
Actually, it's going to be Amy. I know
that You're confusing us.
It's always me. But
it is Amy. Sorry.
Stay on mute. It's Amy. I will introduce Amy. Amy, awesome Amy, will be taking over.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Maggie. And as we pull up the slides and we get our first speaker, Julie Allison, if you could raise your hand, Julie, we'll be able to spot you. I just want to talk to you about the value of these practices for your personal life. So we were talking over the break about how wonderful it is to have, other colleagues who you appreciate positive communication. We have it in our research, in our teaching. But also when you bring it into your personal life, then you're actually creating the life you want. It really is amazing at how, practicing and integrating these different approaches into daily living really builds a much satisfying, happy, you just feel it's the life you want. And so you feel like you have control over changing the impact of your life and the impact of other people's lives, around you. So it's really exciting. We're going to have 3 speakers today who are going to talk about ways to bring the positive communication into your daily life. The first person I'd like to introduce is Julie. Hi, Julie. Julie Allison.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, thank you. And if we can advance the slide. So thank you so much, Julie, for joining us. She's going to talk about how to reboot after disappointment. Julie is a seasoned executive learning and development leader with 2 decades of experience. She's currently the executive director of Arkansas Fellowship and CEO of JKA Consulting. She's been doing leadership and executive coaching for many, many years, and she's really explored ways of emphasizing individual potential and aligning strengths with diverse industry goals. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Julie.
Yeah, so do I share my screen with my PowerPoint?
Yes,
Okay,
go ahead. Yeah, just let me know if you can't, if you're not able to share. We can make sure you have that right.
I believe I am. Does that look right to everybody?
Yes, it does.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for having me. Dr. Mirivel and I have worked together and collaborated for some number of years. And what we did is we wrote an article out of a shared experience. So as I want to talk to you about, just a second, how to reboot after disappointment at work. In my experience, found myself midlife with a financial restraint that closed the department that I had built for 15 years. It was one of those moments in life where this place was like my baby, right? I had built it. We had a beautiful team. And then to no fault of our own, it was not going to work out the way I'd expected. So facing a real disappointment, how do you reboot while you're dealing with the grief of that? I since then have gone on into executive coaching, and majority of my clients are founders and CEOs of startups. And I was amazed at how they could be so resilient when they have a plan and it doesn't work out, and they could reboot really quickly. So I got real curious. And I believe Dr. Mirivel did the same thing, as he had a similar experience that he shared. I think the theme of this conference today is loneliness to connection. And I found myself really withdrawn during this time, disconnected from the work environment that I had grown so accustomed to and enjoyed so much. So during this time, I was like, what are some of those strategies that I used, that I've watched other people use, that Dr. Mirivel experienced, that really worked? One was, real quick, harness the power of those positive affirmations. We can find ourselves spiraling at moments, and some of those positive affirmations that worked were to say to yourself, I am enough. What if this is working for me and not against me? I have the capacity to overcome this moment. We've overcome everything to this point. We will continue to. Life is a journey. This is just one chapter of it. And this is one of my all-time favorites. This is written on my mirror in my bathroom. Universe, I'm ready. Show me how good it gets. And this kind of leans into a mindset shift. We want to be able to reframe your mindset. We get stuck sometimes sometimes I feel like too long. In my case, in my experience, I think I did stay stuck too long. But we don't judge how long we stay in a place. The point is that we try to continue to make progress. So some of those mindset shifts that you can do in the moment is stop yourself and ask yourself, what can I learn? What can I learn from this situation? Another one that I thought my founders actually use quite often is if you can get outside of yourself and ask, what advice would you give your best friend if they were in the same situation? I think this separates you from yourself and helps you look at the problem in front of you in a different perspective. This moment is a gift. How can I use it to do what I love? You're already scared, so do it scared anyway. And also to ask really big questions, like, what do you want to do with your career? I think it's really important when you're trying to figure out what gives you joy is to ask the people around you very specifically, what am I doing when you see me at my best? I asked family and friends this, and as they could identify, because I was really struggling about, I had all this, skills experience. What do I want to do with it now? If I don't want to experience the same thing, or if I don't really want to do it if I want to do this in a different capacity, what is it that really brings me joy? I thought I knew. And then when I started asking people who see me and work with me every day, they saw something very different. I didn't necessarily see myself as someone who, I didn't know listening was such a great skill. Dr. Mirivel does talk about this quite a bit, is how important it is to listen. And that was one thing that would go to the front when I talk to coworkers and family, and I say, you listen really well. And so I think that's really the reason why I went into the executive coaching practice, was because I was able to lean into this moment of disappointment and say, how do I take my skills to the next level and practice something different? I know that was really, really short. Dr. Mirivel, do you have anything to add?
No, I think this was really fantastic. I mean, in the conference, we talked about what it was like to be lonely, and then how intrapersonal communication can get you out of loneliness. And you've just offered some tools. So I think now we're going to try to get people to talk together, right?
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, it gives us more time for people to have these conversations. So we're going to put it in the chat, some prompt questions, and go out for, we have, I believe, 10 minutes or so that we can actually try to reflect on the questions and identify how we could bring this into our own lives. So
great.
Let's see. I'm going to add questions into the chat. So make sure that you have, you're able to access this question. So think about a disappointment or setback. Think about a disappointment or setback you experienced in your work. How did you reframe your mindset to see the situation from a different perspective? What insights or opportunities did you discover as a result? So take a couple minutes to reflect on that. We'll go into the small chat groups, and you'll get another opportunity to connect with some people and share your perspectives.
So I'm opening the rooms, and so I think people can join. They're a little larger, but hopefully that'll give everybody a chance to have some friends. Hey, Amy, do you think we should, do you want me to do anything with the messages in terms of the prompt?
I put it into the chat.
I can broadcast it. Do you want me to broadcast?
Yeah, can you broadcast?
Yep. And just
okay, yeah, if you're able to send it through. I just did the one on
number 2.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll give people well, we've got plenty of time, 5-6 minutes.
I definitely want those slides. I think thinking about all those intrapersonal messages. Those are good ones to have handy on a day.
Yes.
Yeah, one thing that we, I mean, this is kind of a conversation now, but so Julien and I have known each other for a while. And in fact, when I first started giving talks to people about positive communication, she was leading the organizational development office at a really large hospital and doing amazing work for people. So that's kind of how we get to know each other, because she also hired a bunch of our alumni. And so I couldn't, imagine when she had developed this office, which was making such a difference in employees' life. I mean, they had a champions program for employees that rewarded, outstanding people, everything she developed from the ground up. And so to see her going through this hard time. But as we talk together, it's so interesting to me because what she described today, this reframing of your own thinking, is really what Kory was trying to get at in his keynote, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, and that if you can short circuit some of that, it can be really difficult. So when I went through a hard time myself, and it took me a while, but my dad would encourage me and be like, it's you're going to be fine. And he would say, just think of this moment as a gift. I mean, you can do anything you want. And in fact, most of what you'll do, you're going to love. Like, you love teaching, you love, speaking, you love all this stuff. So right now is a gift. And I have to say, for many months, it did not feel like a gift. But that piece of advice today, I think about it, it was a gift. It's so funny that your perception can shift so much.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what got Julien and I thinking about this idea together.
Oh, that's a great example. I have a colleague who said, well, your life is so full at the moment. Once something goes and you may be disappointed, you just create a space, and it's something's gonna fall in your lap that you wanted, and it's turned out every time. So I try to think that way.
That's awesome. And you do feel lonely in those moments, right? That's what Julia, I'm glad she said that at the opening, because you do, when you're having these appointments at work, you begin to feel lonely. And one of your instincts, I do think, is to withdraw, right?
Right.
It's so hard to fight.
It is.
I wonder what our friends here who are with us are thinking. They're just listening to our conversation, Amy.
I'm thinking about one of the other questions that we had, and maybe I should broadcast that one out in case other conversations are wrapping up, but that share a positive affirmation that resonates with you. And you both shared one naturally from your father and from your colleague, like these things are opening up, or
yeah.
It's this moment. Should I send it, or are we going to bring people back?
How much time? So 1:55.
We have a little time.
Yeah, we have time. Yeah, go ahead and broadcast it if you don't mind. Thank you. You're amazing on the back end, Maggie. I really admire your skill set.
Hey, I got the music going. I feel like that felt really good.
Yeah. You're cracking me up with that, actually, because you're so happy. You're like, I want to do this again.
I know. I can't help it.
Let's put the questions she put as prompts. And we kind of found our way. So Julie and I tried to find a way to collaborate. And we were just meeting for coffee. And so we started picking, and suddenly we wrote this article together.
Yeah, that's great.
That really emerged out of this conversation. So, and she coaches people, so she coaches all of these entrepreneurs who inherently are going to face a lot of disappointment.
I know.
So her job is kind of helping them through it. So she's seen, on the other hand, like what seems to work.
Yep.
Phil, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Julien. I'm really enjoying this. I'm just so thrilled how well it's all working. At least to me, it seems like it's working very well. And yeah, I think I'm seeing some interesting themes I want to bring up at the end, if we have anybody left still listening.
I'll be here, Phil.
Hey, thank you, Maggie. You can cue the music once more.
Yeah, we'll have dramatic music. We've gotten a few questions on the chat about how can people join, if they can join like our email list or things like that. So we definitely have some people that want to hear more from us, and that's really good. I've received a couple private chats about people having life happening while they're also attending this conference, and just letting you all know that we're glad that you're listening in with one ear and tapping into, hopefully we can share some of our positivity and connection with you, and that you'll be able to get from this moment to the next one that is waiting for you.
You know, I always think about, we just need to make a 1% change. You know, if each one of us did a 1% change, and you think about this group, such a large group now, if we all did that 1% change, wow, we'd be amazing. We could have such a big impact, right?
Yeah. When we talk about World Happiness Day and what we're gonna do, maybe that's it. Maybe we think about what's that 1% change. I need to change. 1% is a good place to start.
So I'm going to bring everybody back, Amy, because it's 1:52.
Thank you.
So I'm closing the rooms. That's the part people don't like. But you can tell them there's 2 more breakout rooms coming.
Yep. And Tom is our next speaker, so.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
It's always a good sign when nobody's coming right away. You kind of know,
know.
They're all engaged.
Good prompts. I see people coming back. Welcome back. We're so sorry to have to pull you away from that great conversation, but there are more to come. We have more breakout sessions. So let's just wait for everyone to come back, and then we can go on to our next speaker. Okay. And we still have some people out there. Okay. Oh, they're really coming back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Sorry to have to bring you back from a great conversation. We're going to have 2 more breakout sessions, so there'll be more opportunities. So what I'd like to do now is turn to our next speaker, who can talk about, you know, we can continue on with this discussion of how you can bring positive communication to your own life, how you can apply it to your own life. Our next speaker is Tom Roberts, and he is a executive coach with Crandberry Leadership. He actually specializes in executives who go overseas. And that can be quite a lonely experience to be all on your own, especially as a leader. Leaders often feel isolated and alone. So he's going to talk about that experience and how to build connections. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tom.
Okay, let me share my screen. So my name is Tom Roberts, and I'm really happy to be here. I feel a little outclassed by all the academics in the room, but I am the guy who takes a lot of things that I learned from folks like you and tries to apply it. I decided to do a fast-moving play in 3 acts today to tell the story that you guys can write the 3rd act to. And so I was a 20-year executive with a pharmaceutical company, 11 years overseas. My last role was as head of Japan in our neurology division, working with epilepsy and Parkinson's patients. But about 3 or 4 years before I left that role, I had made a decision that that was not the way I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And the thing that had really turbocharged my thinking and my passion was helping folks solve problems, especially this very tiny niche of expat executives. So in telling that story, I was always limited because there are only so many expat executives in the world. So we went out and we interviewed 32, I believe, currently, expat high-level leaders that are working around the world in different places around the world. And we're trying to find the red string that kind of ties all of the stories together. And the story I'm going to tell you today is my story, but it's actually duplicated by a factor of almost 32. Everybody had almost the exact same story. And so therefore it becomes very interesting to kind of study. And so the part that I would like to focus on is the effects of pressure on empathy and curiosity in expatriated leaders, and how that is a proxy for anyone with intense pressure in their life, and how that loss of empathy and curiosity creates isolation, which is exactly what's happened to most of my clients, to myself, and to the people on our kind of advisory board of people who have given me their feedback. So it's a fast-moving play in 3 acts. It's not a musical. So everybody flash me some jazz hands here. I want to make sure everybody's with me. All right, we're good. So this is my family, Act 1. In 2008, I was invited by my company to move to Tokyo, Japan, and take over the marketing for our flagship product. And so as you can imagine, I felt good about that, because they were saying, you are the brightest kid on the block. You are the kid in the playground we want to send over there to do cool things. And I got a little bit of hubris about me, and a little bit of, not a good thing when you're going into a different culture to work. So we arrived there, and what the first thing I found is that when the company's going to spend $1 million, because I had to be tax equalized, I'm a U.S. citizen, school for my 2 kids, housing, the whole thing, it costs a lot of money to keep somebody overseas. And so therefore they give you this list of stuff that you have to do that's like 10 miles longer than anything you've ever felt before. And then there's this secret list that you get that is another 1.5 miles long of kind of the boss's list of big stuff that they really want you to change. And so the pressure becomes really crushing. And you get very focused on achieving the endpoint, because you only have 24 months to do it. That was the length of my term, wound up staying 11 years. So that got stretched. But you're supposedly only have 24 years to achieve these things, and the pressure becomes crushing. And so we've been talking about, the factors of isolation all morning here. And I think a couple of these slides are almost unnecessary now, but a couple of data points that we use with our clients is that high levels of pressure can lead to significant mental health challenges, including stress, nervous breakdowns, panic attacks, and depression. And when you put that into combination with living abroad in culture that you don't understand, and perhaps you're being pulled on by multiple cultures. For me, I worked for a Belgian company as an American guy. I had a Moroccan boss, and I was living in Japan. So all of these cultures are pulling on me in different ways. That stress leads to isolation. 32 million people in Metro Tokyo. I've never felt so lonely in my entire life as walking down the street feeling like I was the only person there. So individuals start to withdraw from social interactions, and to cope with that pressure. This was from a little study, and I've never felt the same stress that I would imagine a medical student feels. But when I went overseas, I felt this kind of a stress, and a kind of a aggregate review found that medical students often experience a significant decrease in self-assessed empathy. When that empathy goes down, they start alienating team members. They become even more isolated. So this feeling of pressure keeps you from really working in a way that is beneficial to those around you, and you just turn into kind of a very not nice person. And finally, on the positive side, practicing curiosity and empathy, leaders can avoid these misunderstandings and conflicts, and teams work better and isolation decreases. But when you're overseas, you get all this additional pressure of culture. So now I'm going to tell you Act 2, and Act 2 is a little bit of a harrowing story. And so I want to deliver a gentle trigger warning here. This is not a beautiful story, but it is one that is a proxy for anyone who is feeling this type of pressure, and it shows what can happen if you're not deliberate about taking care of these things. And then Act 3 is I want you guys to tell me how to solve this problem. So I'm going to tell you about Kawasaki-san's story. So Kawasaki-san is represented by the guy on the right here staring at his phone. I went to Japan with this long list of stuff to do, and then the long secret list of stuff to do, and I felt this immense pressure. So I started telling my team, look, we've got a series of meetings coming up. These are the most important meetings of your career. And listen, don't mess this up. Please don't mess this up. I was not a good leader during this time. I was not managing myself at this time. So I'm telling Kawasaki-san and his colleagues, we got to be prepared. We got to be ready to go, and we cannot mess this up. So the day of the meeting comes, and at 8 o'clock, we all sit down, and I'm looking around my team. We're focused, we're prepared, we're ready to go. And Kawasaki-san is just staring at his phone, and his face is ashen, and he looks like he's about to pass out. And so at a break, I pulled him aside. I said, Kawasaki-san, what's going on? He said, Everything's fine, Thompson. Don't worry, everything's fine. So 2 more hours pass, and I pull him outside again. I said, Kawasaki-san, something is wrong. Please tell me. And he said, no, everything is fine. No worries, everything is fine. So at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it had gotten worse, and he was kind of sweating, and he looked very unhealthy. And I pulled him outside, and I said, Kawasaki-san, I'm going to cancel this meeting unless you tell me what's going on, because that was like my last lever, is to figure out what was going on. And he said, Thompson, you've reiterated to us so many times that this meeting is so important, that we need to focus so much on this meeting, that I really don't want to disrupt this. I said, please tell me what's going on. He said, yeah. He goes, this morning she's fine, but this morning, and he told me a story of his wife who had tried to do very difficult harm to herself. She had tried to commit suicide. And my heart dropped out of my chest and through my body and into hell, because there is a cultural aspect at play here that Japanese business people, especially over the age of 50, like Kawasaki-san, they tend to put work here and life here. However, I had put so much pressure on him because of my own pressure that he had decided that it was more important to stay in a meeting than to go tend to a family member that had tried to kill themselves. Now, Kawasaki-san's wife today is thriving. She's doing fantastic. So the ending of the story is a nice one for Kawasaki-san and his wife. But the lesson I took from that, it took me 5 weeks just to process what I had done to my team and the lack of empathy, curiosity, friendship that I had shown, because I had felt so isolated. And the only thing that mattered was achieving these big goals. And so as we go to breakout, I want to leave you with these 3 questions. I would like for you guys to write the finale, and somebody take a pencil and just jot down a few notes, take a screenshot of it or a photo of it. And somehow or another, I would love to have you guys send me just your bullet pointed thoughts on what to do here. But there are 3 ways of looking at this. So number 1 is, how could I have proactively decreased the chances of high isolation, low empathy? How could I have done it proactively before I knew that it was going to hit me? Second, if a person finds themselves in a situation in crisis like this of low empathy, low curiosity, and high isolation, how would you coach them to wellness? How would you coach them out of that? And the third question is, how can organizations ensure that this type of isolation, low empathy, and low curiosity doesn't happen with their employees? Because I will tell you, I learned how to say good morning, good evening, and order a beer in Japanese. And that my company said, you're prepared, you're ready to go. I didn't get the intercultural pieces of this. So if we can, we break up, and those 3 questions, I would love for you guys to do my job for me and to tell me what you would do.
Thank you, Tom. That was a great story to share with us. I mean, it's powerful, painful, powerful, but it's a great learning opportunity. So thanks for sharing your personal story with us. We'll go out to breakout rooms, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. The breakout rooms are opening. Feel free to join them. We've recreated them so you can connect with people, and then we'll put the prompt again in the broadcast. Actually, in the broadcast, I can only do short versions of this. So,
Okay, are you doing the broadcast?
yeah, is that okay?
Yep, I'm gonna
Question 1.
not do broadcast.
Question 2. It's somehow shortening everything. So let me see here.
Thanks, guys, for carrying that last part. Started having a coughing fit.
Okay.
You know how this cold goes.
I was just hanging back because I wanted to ask you y'all a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you want me to try to cut mine a little short? I think we need to end. So we were thinking
5.
We're good on time.
we're okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just let me know. I can
think
always cut it a little short. So okay.
I mean, I don't know how long it is right now, but you know,
Right.
enough just to get them to have a conversation. I mean, these have been good, really short snippets. So
Yeah.
about what other people have done.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, here's question number 2. And here's question number 3.
Thanks, Julien,
Do
for
you see
doing
the?
that.
Hey, no worries. Okay. Is Tom still with us, or did he go into a room? Do you know?
Tom. Oh, did we lose Tom?
Well, that's just great. I mean, I hope he's having in there fun. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely be fun to answer the question with him there.
You know, it's interesting how many people in the comment section have been putting in. I've experienced that too, or I've, you know, yeah, I think a lot of people have this kind of experience. It's a good story for us to reflect upon.
Yeah.
You know, Julien, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to say, you know, in our class, when we did those projects, I had a lot of students that are exchange students, and they actually focused on this topic for exchange students. But what ended up happening is that the class members ended up building, you know, creating a social group so that they weren't so isolated, and then they did all sorts of social stuff together.
Well, what's tough in my experience, you know, as an exchange student, was that you kind of have two poles, right? Like at a university, I think it's more complex because as an exchange student, I was totally in a host family. I didn't have anybody to connect with.
Yeah.
But as at a university, it's really difficult because one option is you hang out with people from your own culture, right?
Yep.
But then you're not learning the language and you're not benefiting from the experience as much.
Yeah.
Or you're going the other way, but then you lose connection to a lot of friends you could have almost immediately. So it really is tricky.
That's exactly what they talked about.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is. It is. And so we had in the class, there were some, like, we started out with, you know, they clung together from the country, but then they purposely made crossovers after after talking about that.
So let me look at our timing here.
Yep.
We're supposed to start the new training at 2:10.
Yeah, so we should give them their 1 minute warning and bring them back in, and maybe they could maybe they could put something in the chat message so that Tom has the he's interested.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so I'm telling everybody we're bringing them back for our 3rd training. I'm closing the rooms, everybody. I know they're going to wish they would have had more time for conversation. This time, Maggie, I feel like I'm the joy killer.
Okay, we can share the role.
I think
the joy killer.
You did such a nice job with it. I feel like.
But savor that, Julien.
Oh, I'm savoring it. All right.
With our military families and our Savoring and Resilience study, one of their messages, like interpersonal message, it was a theme message, was savor the suck. This sucks. They're going to get over it. And for military families, they learned how to savor what was going wrong at the moment with the knowledge that they had the capacity and in front of them that they could still enjoy. But they called it savoring the suck. So that can be what happens when we bring everybody, rip them away from their conversations and bring them back into this room. We still can savor that moment.
Welcome back, people. Welcome back. Sorry to pull you away from the conversation. We promise you there is going to be more. Just to circle back, if you came up with some great ideas for Tom, please put it in the chat. You know, one of the things that really came up in some of the messages before in the chat is that so many of us are experiencing something like this, you know, whether it's the Army or a different context, but this is a common experience. So, you know, put in the chat different ideas that might have come up in your group. I think we could all benefit from them. With that, I'd like to turn over to our 3rd speaker, Jessica McCall. And if we could have Jessica spotlighted if she's not already, that would be great. So Jessica is a senior lecturer, thank you very much, senior lecturer at University of North Carolina, Greensboro. And she's also been trained in the UPenn Resiliency and Wellbeing as a facilitator. This is an amazing program, really bringing a lot of these practices to students, but also to how you can integrate it into your own life. So she really has enjoyed exploring new and exciting ways to create engaging interaction in the classroom. And she's going to talk a little bit about doing that. So take it away, Jessica.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amy. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see a big orange screen that says Joy Multiplier?
Perfect.
Excellent. So thank you for that quick setup. I'm actually going to share a little bit about that UPenn program today. So the University of Pennsylvania Positive Psychology Center and the UNC system, which is 17 different campuses, came together to try to come up with a way to help some of the challenges that our students were having with mental health. And this was sort of a 3-4 year program development process. And then it was actually, we were able to have the training last fall, and we are now implementing the training on all of our campuses. And so I feel really honored to be able to be the last person in this session, because so much of what we're going to share right now, we've talked about throughout the conference. And then there's some really amazing connections to pedagogy, as well as to sort of the idea of just following up on what Tom and Julie have talked about, how we might begin to reduce loneliness and how we might begin to sort of spread some of that joy in our everyday interactions. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a slide, and I am a facilitator that loves group interaction. So I'm going to be asking you to do things the entire time I'm talking. So you can think about it in your head, or you can share. Our opening question is, who do you share your wins with? So when you're excited about something, you want to share that, who do you share your wins with? And I would love for you to just kind of think about that for a second. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. The follow-up question is actually even more important for our learning. The follow-up question is why? Why this person? Right? So who do you share your wins with? And then when you can kind of wrestle with that, I'd love for you to just drop a word into the chat that explains why that person. So what are some of the words that sort of come up for you? Why your mom? Why your colleague? Why your significant other? Love it. Understanding, intimacy, trust, validation. These are amazing. Because they care. Perfect. They get to celebrate with you. Not any competition. Nice. Appreciation. Well done. I mean, and so we can see that there are certain reasons that we go to certain people, right? And that we would likely not go to other people. And that's really what we're going to have to kind of wrestle with today, is that unfortunately, as human beings, we don't always respond in the most positive ways when people share wins with us. And we would think that would be easy, right? But there are all sorts of things that complicate that interaction. What we're really talking about today is the idea of being a joy multiplier. And this is that idea that you will build trust and connection by helping people to sort of savor their positive experiences. And so there, like I said, this is really connected to everything we've been talking about, how we can continue to enhance and to spread that joy to help reduce some of that loneliness and enhance some of the connection. The really interesting piece here is that they typically say that there are 4 response styles when people do share their joy. Unfortunately, 3 of those are pretty negative. Only one of those styles is going to really strengthen that joy and then help to maximize it and spread the joy. So what I want to show you are those styles, and we're going to kind of think through when we might be experiencing some of those. So here are the 3 that we call the joy thieves. And so the joy thieves, again, like I said, they're easy, there's a trap, it's easy to fall into, but we get distracted and disengaged. And we know when we're stressed and we're trying to multitask, and I know I'm guilty of this too, when one of my graduate teaching assistants walks into the room and shares something, I've really got to watch it, right? That I'm turning, that I'm focused on them, that I'm using eye contact, that I'm smiling, and that I am really appreciating it. And I'm not typing an email at the same time. Right. I am not sort of checking my phone. I'm not saying, hold on, So just distraction, disengagement is a really big joy thief. The second one, and again, it's not always intentional, changing the conversation. So sometimes someone shares something really amazing with us, and our natural instinct is to change the conversation and not sit in that moment. One of the reasons is what we all know, right, is that we're always thinking about what we're going to say next. And so sometimes when someone says, hey, I just won this big award, your natural thought is, oh my gosh, I won the award too. Right? But in that moment, when you're trying to connect, you're also changing the conversation, and we're not sitting with what that person has shared with us. The third, and I know all of you out there who have high anxiety like I do can relate to this one, is focusing on the negative. So when someone said, we had this example in the training, I thought it was great. Someone said, hey, I just went to Paris and I got engaged. Sometimes our natural reaction is, oh my gosh, right? Like, how did you ensure that you were safe? Like, what did you do? Was that the best idea right now? Are you able to keep up with your studies? Automatically, you slip into this anxiety mode, and you start to sort of just sharing all these things that you may have been worried about, but it completely just squashes their joy. So thinking about these, what we really want to focus on is how do we become a joy multiplier? And just like Julie and Tom have sort of just helped us to see, how do we use this in our everyday lives so that we can enhance the environments at work, right? So that we can, going back to the pedagogical pieces, we can enhance these environments in our classrooms, in our communities, in our even academic spaces. How do we maintain authentic engagement? So that's really what we're going to talk about in just a minute. Okay, things we do want to consider, and then I'm going to get you all into some groups to start talking. We do need to be careful when we are responding to joy and then also sharing joy. We do want to make some really important decisions. We want to consider when we're sharing, right? And how we're encouraging sharing, because sometimes we know we're overwhelmed, and it's okay to say, I really want to talk about this, right? Let's set up some time to kind of dig a little bit deeper if you're not in a space and you're running the class and you can't focus, but give it the attention, okay? How we're sharing. Okay, so if we are trying to share joy, how do we do that? Okay, how do we set it up? The idea of empathy and how we might want to incorporate in the sharing, but also in the responding. And then also culture. So this is something that, as intercultural scholars, I know many of you will immediately recognize, but recognizing how we are culturally taught to respond and to share is definitely going to play a role in here. And there are certainly other things we want to consider. Okay, last but not least, I would encourage everybody to really think through your sort of daily interactions. This is a really cool activity where you can kind of create a chart and think about the different people in your lives and how you react to them. And that you might find that you are sort of often more distracted and disengaged with certain people. You might change the conversation with other people. You might also find that, there are certain people in your lives where you are authentically engaged, right? So just doing a quick check-in to kind of see how you might respond will also help to enhance those relationships, like we said, to reduce that loneliness, increase the connection, and then also model it for other people, right? So if you are modeling that response, that joy multiplication for others, that's going to allow them to do that for you as well.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yes.
I see that Julien has put in the prompts for the breakout sessions, so
excellent.
You can take a look at that.
Okay.
We will also send them through in the messages. So we will now go out into the breakout sessions, and you'll have a chance to talk about this.
Okay, I'm opening the breakout rooms, and hopefully people can enjoy. I think we've got a couple minutes here, 4 or 5 minutes. So we want to make sure we end on time. Have fun. I'm just going to take a moment to look at the breakout room and make sure there's some people in there who've gone. Nathan, I know Nathan was just able to reconnect, so I've moved him into the different room. Okay, so I think we've got people everywhere here.
How do we want to do the timing on the last few minutes? It looks like this started at 3:20. We were also starting the next section at 3:20. So we might have to run over a little bit.
Okay. We
Yeah,
may
we're
be able
supposed
call them
to.
back a little more quickly.
Yeah, I think at 2:25, Phil, we can
Oh.
we can just close
Jump
everything.
in. Okay. And Julien, the very, very last slide that you put in with a quote from,
Yeah.
do you want, is that for you? You're going to do the last word?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Julien, do you know how to get the text from the chat before we actually sign off?
Do you mean all the things from the chat room?
Yeah, because there are some comments in there I think we might want to keep. I don't know if we're recording it.
It's all being recorded.
Okay, so that you'll have the yeah.
So we'll have a document with everything that's
Yep.
been said in the chat.
Good.
Except I believe the comments that are personal.
Yep.
And anything in the breakout rooms. Did we broadcast these questions out?
Not yet.
All right, I'm on it.
Thank you, Maggie. And Phil, do you want me to? I'll play the PowerPoint slide on my end. Or were you going to share yours?
I can share mine.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'm going to start without it, but then I'll come back to it. But I will move expeditiously since I know we're close on time.
We'll do what we can. It's
Yeah,
not bad for a 3-hour conference.
Lincoln did the Gettysburg Address in 2 minutes, though.
Tough standards. Tough standards.
Well, maybe you should just do that. That'll save us time.
The world will little note nor long remember what I say here today.
Oh, and yet we do.
Yeah.
Should we start to call them back at this point?
Yes, let me call them back. I'm closing the rooms. They're going to be very sad.
Well, they can stay for the after party, right?
That's right.
There we go. We have a solution. Welcome back, everyone. Good to see you. Welcome back. Sorry to be pulling you back so quickly. There's a lot of resistance to coming back.
And no. I think this time we did it. We did do it. We were successful.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Welcome back, people. Welcome back. Sorry to pull you back from great conversations. Just so you know, there is an after party, so there's opportunity for more connecting. So welcome. I'm going to turn it over quickly to Julien so that we can move on to the next part of our program.
First, I want to thank all the presenters here for their work. Really unbelievable 10-minute training and fostering conversation to Julie, Tom, and Jessica. So thank you all for being here. I know it's been a long day and a long conference, but we want to finish with a punch. So I'm going to let Phil take it from here, and then we'll conclude the conference and tell you a little bit more about what we're going to do after the conference.
Hi, everybody. I see 56 participants. Thanks so much for staying with us through the afternoon. I'm going to make this really brief, but my role is to draw out a couple of themes of the conference, point you ahead to future actions, and then offer a closing. We started the day with loneliness. We ended the session just now with joy multipliers. And between those two, we've covered many, many different topics. I've been thinking about where does the possibility for positive communication come up as teachers, as scholars, as practitioners. And one starting point that we saw with the loneliness work is where there's trouble, right? Where we notice individuals suffering, we notice loneliness. Tom Roberts, I'm thinking about your talk of the experience of being there. And then we look to positive communication interventions, intrapersonal, interpersonal, for alleviating suffering, alleviating trouble. Where there are broken relationships, where there's been destructive conflict, where there can be dialogue and healing. Where there's injustice or systemic violence or inequity, positive action can be nonviolent, can be economic. Julien, I'm thinking of your work with Heifer Foundation. So we sometimes start with trouble, but at other points, PosComm starts with where the positive elements could be enhanced. It's not so much that there's profound trouble, but we could do more, we could do better. Where needs perhaps are being met. And so I think about Maggie, your wonderful work on savoring, Leslie talking with us about enhancing positive emotions. Noticing where people are collaborating, where people are sharing power, where people are transcending differences and understanding how that's done, how that could be done better. I think about the work on community in the classroom that was presented a while ago, and where power structures are being changed for the better. So I hope those two kind of general directions leave us thinking about where we might continue the work we're doing or take up the work of positive communication. And from there, I'd like to share slides and take us ahead. Let's see if this is the right one. Google Chrome, presenter view. So that's me in closing. 3 ways we want to invite you to stay connected. One is please give feedback on today's conference. And here is a QR code. And I'm hoping somebody will drop into chat the link where you can also do that. We'd love to hear from you. Second, we'd love you to stay connected. This is our second PositiveComm conference. We've had 3 book party events, launching books or celebrating books. More will be coming, so you can keep up with what we have coming soon to you. And third, and most immediately related to that, we invite you to stay right now, if you have another half hour or so, for an after party, where we'd like to talk about the future of the Positive Communication Network, what the PosCommNetwork might provide and do, and the ways that the engagement could be most meaningful for everybody in the room. So please stay on if you can stay. But before coming to that, I also want to add finally in closing that next Wednesday, March 20th, is United Nations International Day of Happiness. The UN started in 2013 promoting one day a year that is devoted to understanding and enhancing human quality of life on Earth. This is very tied to the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has developed and been pursuing. And each year, the International Day of Happiness has a theme. And just so pertinent for us, this year the theme is connection. And as the description of it says, lasting happiness comes from feeling connected to others and being part of something bigger. So in that spirit, I want to offer you 4 small things we can do in honor of World Happiness Day that will promote positive communication. Give positive comments to as many people as possible. And we've talked today about compliments in more than one setting. Really listen to what people say and listen without judgment. I think of the ongoing positive regard that the great Carl Rogers talked about, encountering people with that kind of attention. Share an encouraging news story to inspire others. Finally, reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member or a colleague for support. And I take that in two ways: reach out to offer support and reach out to ask for support, which we could all use. So with those specific actions in mind, you might have others. Thanks so much for being together today. And I'll turn it over to Julien for the last word.
Thanks so much, Phil, for your comments. We're so happy that you joined us for the conference. We're so happy that you're part of this network, and we hope that you'll continue to be part of it. This is our second annual conference, and we plan on doing another one next year. Please stay with us for the after party. It's not really a party, but it is a chance to network. There's no alcohol involved, but we wish we could have provided. But it is a chance to network with people and begin to dream with us about the future of the Positive Communication Network. So we're going to tell you what we've been up to, and then actually work together through a liberating structure to really make a difference. As my final word, I'm just going to give you a quote. This is Karl Jaspers, and I've been thinking about it all day. And he said this. He's a German Swiss philosopher, psychoanalyst. He says, in this world, the task remains to come closer and closer to each other in an ever widening perimeter of communication. That's probably not going to change. The perimeter is going to get wider and wider and wider, but we're going to have to find a way to stay close. And so please stay close to us so we can stay close to you and continue to create wonderful connections together. So thank you so much for being part of this conference. And we'll wait a couple minutes before we transition to the next part. We'll see how many people are here, and then we'll take it to the next level. So thanks again to everybody and our speakers.